Okay, it's 7 o'clock. I'm calling the meeting of the San Leandro City Council to order. Today is Monday, July 15th. It is 7 p.m. I will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. If you're able to stand, please do. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll?
Yes. Councilmember Aguilar.
Present.
Councilmember Azevedo. Councilmember Baloo.
Present.
Councilmember Bowen.
Present.
Councilmember Viveros Walton.
Present.
Vice Mayor Simon is absent, and Mayor Gonzalez.
Present.
Thank you.
So for our announcements, the City of San Leandro conducts orderly meetings to fulfill its mandate. Discriminatory statements or conduct that would potentially violate the Federal Civil Rights Act of 1964 and or the California Fair Employment and Housing Act, California Penal Code sections 403, 415, are per se disruptive to a meeting and will not be tolerated. Please see the City Council Handbook and the City Council Meeting Rules of Decorum for more information. We've also got item 5A on the consent calendar that should be taken as an action item. So we are moving it to the first action item under item 10 because at the last meeting, the vote was not unanimous. And per our handbook, that is our process. And so we'll be putting that as an action item as opposed to a consent item. And then also, given the significant agenda that we have and the need to move on item 10E as something that needs to happen with speed, or at least come for a full discussion before we go on our break, I will be moving 10E, which is the ERP system set of contracts, to the front of those action items after the consent item that's been moved. Are there any concerns about doing that? Seeing none, that's how we will proceed. Madam Clerk, would you please read your announcement?
Yes. If you would like to make a public comment during the meeting, you can do so in person via Zoom. If you are present at the meeting, please complete a speaker card and submit it to the city clerk before the item is presented. If you wish to participate in public comment via Zoom, you can use the raise your hand tool when the item is called. During the public comment session, speakers will be invited to speak and will have a set time to share their comments. A countdown timer will appear for their convenience, and when the time is up, the microphone will be muted. All raised hands outside of public comment will be lowered to avoid confusion. Once public comment is opened, hands may be raised to speak. There will be a 30-minute window for public comments, which will take place under item 7, public comments, as per the published agenda. After this time is up, the council will proceed with the rest of the meeting's agenda. If you have not had the opportunity to speak during the initial 30-minute period, there will be another chance to do so after item 12, City Council reports. Thank you.
So for item 3 on our agenda, there was no closed session today and hence no report. And at this point in time, there are no recognitions. So I'm going to move to item 5, which is our consent calendar, and looking around to see if there are any amendments. A reminder, we have moved 5A already into an action item position. Councilmember Baloo, please.
Seeing no amendments, I'll move the item.
Thank you. Councilmember Aguilar.
I'll second.
Okay, so I've got a motion by Baloo and a second by Aguilar, council members respectively. What I'm going to do at this point in time is turn to our public to see if we've got public comment on the consent calendar.
Mr. Mayor, I have no public comment in person or on Zoom.
Okay, so at this point in time, seeing none, is there any further discussion or interest in discussion? Seeing none, let's move to a vote.
Councilmember Bowen.
Aye.
All votes are in. Councilmember Aguilar, yes. Councilmember Azevedo, yes. Councilmember Baloo, yes. Councilmember Bowen, yes. Councilmember Viveros Walton, yes. Mayor Gonzalez, yes. Motion passes 601 with Vice Mayor Simon absent.
I would like to take a moment to just acknowledge something that we did. We just accepted $6.6 million of grant money. So I think there's huge kudos that go to the Water Pollution Control Plant team and everyone that was involved in putting that grant structure together, pushing for the grant, And, you know, we get the icing on the cake where we get to pass a resolution that brings that money into our city. But $6.6 million, folks, that's something that's worth clapping up, I think. It's good to celebrate because there's lots of good things happening in our city. Item number 6, we do not have city manager. Do we have a report today? Anything separate? Nope, I didn't think so. Let's move to public comment, please. This is specifically for items that are not related to items that are not on our agenda. How many speakers do we have online and in person?
Mr. Mayor, I have 1 public comment online and I have 13 cards in person.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the online person and then we'll move to those here in the room. And if you could please set the timer for 2 minutes.
Okay. We're just waiting on IT. Annalisa, you may unmute yourself. Annalisa?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you first for taking the time and congratulations on the grant money, by the way. I'm talking about St. Mary Avenue in San Leandro, and I'm sure you're going to hear a lot of speakers about it shortly. But this has escalated into threats of bodily harm to us all over, parking our cars legally, using cameras legally, as well as lighting legally. Having someone that one of you know intimidating us by following us in our cars, multiple times parking in the middle of our street, near, if not in front of our house, with their truck running for over an hour, parking around the corner on Begeer or down the street, and then follow us to our location and stop next to our car, needs to stop. Threats have come from 871, 800, as well as that black truck that you all know who they are, that double cab that follows us and has threatened us and gone on our property. This last weekend, we have had 2 police calls on us within 2 hours Friday night. I feel the police have more important things to do than to come because one of our cars had been placed 1 hour over the 72-hour limit. Also, another call within that time, you had another policeman come out and tell us our generator was running to start one of our cars. Thus, the police have more important things to do than to come out to St. Mary Avenue twice in one evening. We have been dealing with Lieutenant Barajas and Lieutenant Walton. I just don't, it's just a waste of the time for the police to come for something like this. Let's not bother the police over silly matters. But threats to us with bodily harm, and you know who you are on St. Mary Avenue and who is intimidating us. We wish that you would stop it. We just want to be left alone. We are still under
Your time is up.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, there is no more public comment online, so we will go in person.
Thank you.
Rob Thompson?
Thank you. So this is a follow-up to 881 St. Mary's Avenue. So you've just heard one side of it. I will just say Friday night, he has a generator that runs. He turned a generator on outside his house on the street, purposely trying to charge his car, a car that has not moved more than 50 feet in the last 2.5 years. He just parks it around. So he turned the generator on. The generator runs at around 115 decibels. It ran from 8:30 at night to 9:45 on Friday night. At 4:30 on Saturday morning, he moved all 5 of his cars between the various spaces that he parked. When he does that, he idles the cars. He has full brights on all of the cars as he's doing so. It's at 4:30 in the morning. The only reason to do that was to disturb the peace. Before 9 o'clock the next morning, he had moved all the cars again emphasizing there was no reason for him to move those cars at that time. And Annalise just mentioned the police were called out twice on Friday. The police have actually been called out and arrived at his property 18 times since May 3rd. This is an issue that we're asking the city to help us resolve. I completely agree it is a waste of police time. But until the city steps up and finds a way to resolve this issue with this neighbor who is constantly recording us, parking his cars, playing subliminal messages on his radio to us, harassing us, shouting abuse at us. My wife submitted a public comment today where I'm sure she outlined a number of issues that she's had of verbal and physical, well, not physical abuse, sorry, verbal abuse. We're asking the city to step up. We all came, 4 of us came 2 weeks ago, and one of other neighbours have been a number of times over the past month or so. We're not getting any action in the city. No one's following up with us. We haven't had one person respond to us in the last 2 weeks, even though we specifically asked someone to follow up with us. We are asking the city to step up and help us resolve this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Robert Bulatow? Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Robert Bulatow. First, I want to say congrats on getting that grant money. Very impressive. While we have all this noise about California Waste Solutions, who we do not have a contract with, donating to many campaigns as a conflict of interest, why are we not highlighting that ACI, who we do have a contract with, has donated thousands of dollars to our candidates in our city, including $3,500 to our mayor? Same with Cal Coast Development, who have donated thousands of dollars towards our own previous elected officials and left our marina in a state of disarray. Hindsight is 2020, and while we can point out many of our own issues, what we should do to be productive is reduce the influence of big money on our elections. I understand that many of you have had to play this game in order to get elected, but we don't have to do that anymore. This is why I'm advocating for district site elections to conform with the California Voting Rights Act, as well as lowering the amount of money any entity can donate to a campaign in our city to $500. We must represent the people, not the big donors. This will create a culture shift that focuses on the needs of our community rather than the quid pro quo to donors. Most of our community have no connection or knowledge of who represents their districts or what districts they even live in. And that needs to change. We must be representatives of the people, not politicians. We must be efficient and focus on the needs of each community, or else we end up representing the needs of nobody. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Robert Marujo?
All right. I have lived in the city of San Leandro for over 30 years. While our town has never been a stranger to crime, I never thought I'd see the day when a deranged homeless person would invade my family's backyard and we would have to wait almost an hour to receive service from the police department. So dire is the staffing situation at SLPD, we not only don't have enough officers, but we also don't have enough dispatchers to deploy them. This problem is exacerbated by a bizarrely prolonged hiring process for dispatchers that takes multiple months, a misguided activist police chief who thinks public safety takes second fiddle to her pretending that the officers under her command are out to get Black and brown people, and activist council members who have worked to scare citizens into thinking that the cops are bad guys and we need safety ambassadors to act as middlemen for our protection. Middlemen who can't arrest anyone and carry no weapons, meaning when things turn violent, as they regularly do, SLPD needs to be called anyway, further delaying needed intervention. Every dollar we waste on safety ambassadors is a dollar that can pay for more cops and dispatchers. So why do we do that? Because we base public safety policy not on the outcry of citizens calling and writing, but the whims of coddled, rich, liberal former shop owners and outspoken activists who show up every week with nothing better to do, lest we dare to offend them. Black and brown citizens ironically suffer most as liberal activists claim the policies hurting us are actually good for us. Why? Because it makes them feel like heroes and allies to call everything from our police to the configuration of park benches racist. Let's be clear. The number one priority in this city is crime, not spending thousands of dollars to send council members on field trips to Vietnam and seminars to pad their resumes, not the police chief on a witch hunt to make herself look good, and not the mayor preening at San Leandro night at Sharks games. Make our city safe.
Thank you. Dawn Seifkes?
Good evening, Don Seifkes, 525 Dowling. I want to talk to you about the exterior display of flag etiquette. I want to read you 3 sentences from the official Department of Defense rules on displaying the U.S. flag in an exterior environment. When displaying the U.S. flag with other flags, the United States flag comes first and is centered in the middle of a flag display. In addition, the U.S. flag must be placed higher than the other flags unless other national flags are present. In that case, the U.S. flag would fly at the same height. Here at City Hall, we got no problem. Out front, always the American flag is in the center flagpole higher than the other 2. Tonight, you have the state of California flag and the Progress Pride flag. But the library is in violation of this rule, and it really bothers me. So I want to ask City Council to take charge of this and tell the library they must lower whatever 2 flags they have besides the American flag down a little bit. They don't have to fly them at half mast. The rule is just visibly lower. It's harder for the library because those 3 flagpoles are the same height. Every time I drive by there, all the flags are at the same height. So you have to tell them to lower it because that's the rule. Thank you.
Thank you. Patricia Beebe?
Hi, good evening. My name is Patricia Beebe, and I have been a resident of Alameda County for 10 years. I'm a volunteer with United Sovereign Americans, not a spokesperson. United Sovereign Americans is a nationwide organization with thousands of active volunteers in over 24 states. Today, I come to you as a concerned citizen sharing alarming information about our state's voter database uncovered through thousands of hours of research conducted by a highly qualified and credentialed data team. While the numbers are staggering and somewhat difficult to comprehend, one thing is clear: they don't add up. Just like your checkbook must balance, so must our votes. If you had 10,000 fewer dollars in your bank account than you had deposited, you would certainly want to know what happened. And if a company had that significant a discrepancy in their books, they would most certainly conduct an audit. In fact, yearly audits are required by law for all public companies. Our audit of the 2022 election, using only official data provided by state election officials, shows that the 2022 election may not have been accurate or legally compliant. We are not saying one candidate won over another, or that any election should be overturned. The state's official data from a certified election shows that the votes are counted were not all valid and accurate under law. Tonight, we will present you with a resolution demanding an end to the inaccuracy and uncertainty plaguing our elections, along with a summary of our findings and the laws that apply. We are happy to meet with you to go over this information, including more detail about the specific findings. If you have any questions that I cannot answer now, I will commit to getting you the answer in writing from United Sovereign Americans executive team as soon as possible.
Your time is up.
Okay, before our next speaker, so I need people in the audience to realize that as quiet as you think you are, your voice actually carries all the way up here. And so the reason that I said, excuse me to our speakers, that I actually wanted to make sure that I heard everything that you had to say, but you didn't wait. And so I lost some of what you had to say. Everything that you say is important to us. And so if I ask you to wait, it's because I want to hear what you have to say. It's not to keep you from speaking, but so please, if I ask you to wait, just please hold on a second so we can make sure that you get the full and undivided attention that you deserve. Okay, so let's proceed with our next speaker, please.
Kai or Koi Kellett.
Hello, my name is Kai Kellett. I've lived in San Leandro all my life, and I'm a volunteer with the United Sovereign Americans, and I'm here to continue what Mrs. Beebe was saying. This data and our request for an investigation have been shared with state election officials and law enforcement. It's essential that you, as our representatives, make it clear that these must be taken seriously. Tonight, we come to you, our closest elected representatives, for support and action. We're asking that you listen to the resolution, ask questions if you have them, and then vote promptly for its passage. Your action on this resolution will illustrate your dedication and support to the concerns of your constituents and your country. Myself and others will now read the resolution in multiple parts. The following is a resolution for a legally valid 2024 general election. Whereas it is a recognized civil right in the United States for every citizen to have free and fair elections. Quote, and the right of suffrage can be denied by a debasement or dilution of the weight of a citizen's vote just as effectively as by wholly prohibiting the free exercise of the franchise, end quote. U.S. Supreme Court, Reynolds v. Sims, 1964. Whereas it is the duty of our election officials to guarantee our elections are accurate and free from distortion or manipulation. Quote, Congress seeks to guard the election of members of Congress against any possible unfairness by compelling everyone concerned in holding the election to a strict and scrupulous observance of every duty devolved upon him while so engaged. The evil intent consists in disobedience to the law, end quote. U.S. Supreme Court in Ray Coy, 1888. Thank you.
Thank you. Randolph St. James.
Does that work? There we go. Hi, my name is Randolph St. James, and I've been a resident of San Leandro for 16 years. I'm also a volunteer with United Sovereign Americans, and I'm going to continue with the resolution. Whereas our constitutional system of representative government only works when the following four tenets of an election are upheld. 1, the voter rolls must be accurate. National Voter Registration Act, 1993. 2, votes counted must be from eligible voters. U.S. Constitution, 14th Amendment, Section 2. 3, the number of votes counted must be equal to the number of voters who voted. 4, there can be no more than 1 in 125,000 ballots in error by the voting system. Help America Vote Act 2002. Whereas open source audit of the California 22 general election conducted by California citizens has uncovered evidence of massive inaccuracies that appear to violate both federal and state laws, including 5,886,198 ineligible or uncertain registration violations found within the California State Voter Roll Database, 2,776,939 votes cast by ineligible or uncertain registrations, 123,785 more votes counted than voters who voted. No one knows who cast them. 2,776,849 apparent voting violations are in excess of the legal standard of system accuracy for a valid federal election. The maximum allowable system errors for the 2022 general election in California was 90. Certification as defined by law and attestation of accuracy and compliance appear to have been fraudulent and illegal.
Thank you. Mike Kellett.
Again, my name is Mike Kellett, and I've been a resident for 30 years in San Leandro. And I'm also a volunteer for the United Sovereign Americans, and I will continue the resolution. Whereas These findings trample legal accuracy requirements of the voting system during a federal election. Accuracy is defined as the ability of the system to capture and report the specific selections and absence of selections made by a voter without error. Whereas the intent of the voters must be known factually before certification can be lawfully conducted. Certification of an election that varies from the law is an abridgment of the civil rights of the citizens, a fraud ab initio. United States versus Throckmorton, 1878. Quote, from the time immemorial, an election to public office has been, in point of substance, no more and no less than the expression by qualified electors of their choice of candidates. End quote. U.S. Supreme Court, United States versus Classic, 1941. Whereas the 2022 general election appears to have been invalid, depriving us from the guaranteed protection of our natural rights under a government duly and probably chosen by us, the American people, resulting in incalculable damage to our families, our way of life, and the fabric of these United States. Therefore, we call upon our representatives to provide relief to the people and the assurance of domestic tranquility by joining us in demanding a valid 2024 general election that upholds these existing laws and equitable principles of law. 1, proof of citizenship, identity, and eligibility required to register and vote, not anonymous attestation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike Nettles? Mike Nettles?
Sorry. I'm Mike Nettles. I'm a resident of Alameda County for 68 years, and I'd like to finish the resolution. Voter rolls, number 2, voter rolls certified accurate and available to the public review and challenged 30 days before the start of early voting. Voters added to the date must bring proof of citizenship, identity, and address in person. Person to qualify each to a qualified polling place. Number 3, hand-marked secure ballots similar to currency where imaging and technology is used in establishing the security features must be verifiable in the ballot image. Number 4, systems, machines, security measures, infrastructure, and conduct are required to be compliant with federal law for fraud prevention regarding risk assessment, certification, testing, and implementation. Adjudication must be signed off by party candidate and trained citizen witness after being given full and effective observation rights. Candidates and trained citizens must be allowed immediate access to ballots, ballot and images and CVRs. Number 6, ballot regardless of entry source, election operations and systems must maintain end-to-end chain of command from voter to vote to count final canvass, including audible and witness
Your time is up.
transfers,
Bill Bechtel?
paper records.
My name is Bill Bechtel, and I've been a resident of San Leandro for 20 years. And I also am a volunteer for United Sovereign Americans, and continue with the resolution. Number 7, a NIST compliant randomized or statistically valid end-to-end audit with a 95% confidence level of all elections pursuant to the 14th Amendment, Section 2, must be performed. These audits are to be conducted by qualified, insured, bonded security, forensics, or financial auditors, not personnel from within the election system. Reconciliation will include the vote count, real physical ballots, adjudication, CVRs, ballot count, qualified voter count, custody transfer, and all other paper and electronic election systems, including logs. 8, if the total of unique variances above is more than 10% of the margin of victory, a new election must be held in the state for those candidates affected, unless the issues can be provably corrected by a manual hand recount and a full review of records. 9, waiver of requirements is not allowed. Only end-to-end system compliance from registration through certification can guarantee the intent of the people is accurately recorded. Be it resolved that the San Leandro City Council members stand in support with the concerns and remedies presented here. We implore the Alameda County Board of Supervisors, California's legislature, federal legislators, law enforcement, federal and state prosecutors, judges, and both California Secretary of State and county registrars, voters
Your
cooperate and fulfill these firm
Rebecca St.
requests.
James.
The people.
Rebecca St. James.
Thank you. I'm Rebecca St. James. I've been a resident of San Leandro for 14 years. I'm going to continue with the resolution. In conclusion, what you heard tonight is the culmination of thousands of hours of work by our highly qualified and credentialed volunteer data teams from California and across the country. It's a powerfully written resolution outlining massive inaccuracies in our 2022 election, from registration through certification. In it, you heard us ask for meaningful remedies that will proactively protect the validity of the 2024 general election for all Americans. In fact, the resolution cited many U.S. Supreme Court precedents that support the need for such actions. Laws are being ignored. Bottom line, the checkbook is not balancing and we need certainty. The voting system, which controls our most vitally important right, the right to choose our representatives, is not producing an accurate, trustworthy result. Do you think that these anomalies within our election system, a system which is part of our national security infrastructure, should continue to be ignored? Let's step back for a second and look at the big picture. Large numbers of Americans, including many right here in California, have questions about the trustworthiness of our elections. I think we can all agree that we wish this was not the case, but official data shows these concerns are valid and the law says resolving them is essential in securing our liberty. How much is it costing us not to fix the problem? How much is it costing our GDP, our military, our foreign policy, our health, the self-esteem of our children and young people? And how much is it costing our dignity to keep fighting each other? The cost is immeasurable. So we urge you to agree by putting this resolution on the agenda for the next city council meeting and voting in support of fair, honest, and valid elections. Our website showcases our initiatives nationwide and has some extremely informative videos revealing the anomalies and apparent violations of law in California. The website is uniteforfreedom.com. That's unite4freedom.com. I encourage you to check it out and learn more about our organization. We look forward to providing you with more information, data, and perhaps putting this on the agenda in the near future.
Thank you.
Thank you
Your
very
time
much
is
for your
up.
time tonight.
Carol Chris.
Good evening, council members. I'm Carol Chris, and I've been a resident of San Leandro for 5 years. For over 10 years, I worked elections as a poll worker, either a judge or captain in San Joaquin and Alameda counties, most recently at voting centers in Oakland, Piedmont, Hayward, and San Leandro. In 2022, I declined to work the election cycle because of irregularities I observed in the 2020 and 2021 election cycles. In 2022, I filed my concerns with the California Secretary of State, but received no response from that agency, which is responsible for the monitoring and integrity of the election process. To be brief, my complaints were the following. One, the removal of the required oath of office for all election workers to the Constitution of the United States and the laws of the United States and California. This oath is required under Section 5 U.S. Code 3331. Two, the installation in 2021 of Dominion voting machines resulted in a paper ballot with a QR code, which a voter could not read. This constitutes a break in the chain of custody, a violation of both U.S. and California election laws. Three, the submission of vote-by-mail ballots by other than U.S. mail required validation of signatures at the time of submission. Since 2022, ballots are dropped into unattended ballot boxes. Ballots have been observed by me and other concerned citizens on the ground, sometimes waterlogged from the rain. Four, the transportation of ballots to the ROV for counting was traditionally done by 2 poll workers, witnessed by the rest of the poll workers. There is now no way to confirm the legal transport of ballots. 5, I witnessed on 9/10/21 the intimidation of voters by emphasizing that illegal voting was a felony.
Your time is
This
up.
act-
Wayne Hankins? Mr. Mayor, we have 1:30 left of your 30-minute public comment window.
If we could go ahead and take the 2 minutes, please.
My name is Wayne Hankins, and I've been a resident of Alameda County for 30 years. The issue that brings me to the council tonight is voter rolls. Alameda County has several thousand registered voters that do not live at the address where the ballots are mailed. If we look at public records, a date when these people have moved out of state and the state they moved to is part of public record. There are many more ballots that people in California, when they moved from their balloting address to another location within the county and to another county, these are also considered. And if we look at the numbers, they may be 10 to 20 times higher of ballots that are improperly registered. I spent the greater part of 1 month knocking on doors to verify that voters do not live where they are. And out of the hundreds of homes that I knocked on, I found only 3 or 4 that had moved out of state and actually moved back to that address. Everyone else does not live at that address. In the process of knocking on doors, there was a term that I heard that was no standing. No standing. And I learned that that's right. There was no physical harm, material harm, or financial damage that was done. But my trust in the voting system, the registration system, has been very strong. I have no confidence in it. And I call upon the council here, the mayor, to lead our 19 cities in Alameda County to cleaning up our voter rolls, knowing that every citizen who's here in San Leandro is where they're supposed to be.
Thank you. Your time
Thank
is
you.
up.
You have one more card?
Yes, I do.
Just out of the sake of courtesy, let's take that one card and then we're closing public comment.
Okay, thank you. Mike Katzlakabe?
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council, staff, and members of the public. My name is Mike Katzlakabe. Now, it may be a surprise to you to have so many volunteers with United Sovereign Citizens come to San Leandro to speak on the subject of voter integrity. In case you hadn't guessed, United Sovereign Citizens is a group known for spreading election and voting-related disinformation. As a result of their efforts impersonating election officials in New York State, the group was issued a cease and desist order for intimidating voters. Their claims have been consistently debunked as they seek to sow confusion and doubt about the upcoming 2024 election, despite all available evidence and facts. For more information about their claims, you can watch 2000 Mules, a film that made similar claims and was forced to issue an apology and remove the book and film from its distribution platforms. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, we have no more public comment.
Yes, I want to close public comment. I do have two quick things to do. First, I want to thank everyone who came and spoke, because it's good to hear from our public. To the majority of our speakers, I will say that having spent time in Washington, D.C., this issue of election integrity is a top priority for Homeland Security, for the FBI. So we have received briefings at the U.S. Mayor's Conference, at the National League of Cities, about the focus specifically on election integrity. So know that it is an important priority. With respect to a public commenter who was talking about waste contracts and dollars to campaigns, et cetera, I think I'm going to ask the city manager a simple question, because the implication of the statement by the public speaker is that there's some sort of corruption or misleading or hurting of the public interest. And so I want to cut that short, because I think there's a lot of innuendo that gets used in these chambers. We're going to stick with facts. Okay. So I'm going to go to city manager, because I know that when you were assistant city manager, you were in charge of negotiating, overseeing the entire contract negotiation. At any time during that contract negotiation, did I ever, as mayor, ask you for any special treatment for ACI or any other participant in that negotiation?
Thank you, Mayor. You're correct. As my duties of Assistant City Manager, I was the executive sponsor for the contract negotiations for the solid waste franchise. And no, you did not ask me anything of the such.
What about my other city council members? Did any other member of the San Leandro City Council ask for special favors on behalf of any of the participants in our bidding process?
No.
Thank you. Let's move on to the next item that we have. We have a public hearing, and this is a public hearing with respect to liens that are being placed on property. Just for the benefit of the public, we see this at Finance Committee, and know that liens are an absolute last resort. We have worked with individual account holders, and so now we've got our manager, Susan, or financial analyst, excuse me, Susan Nunes, who will share with us the latest status of the properties or accounts on which we will be placing liens.
Thank you, Mayor Gonzalez. Good evening, Mayor and council members. Thank you for holding this public hearing on liens for non-delinquent non-payments we seek to impose. Great. Move this over. So just a little bit of background. The liens process is for receivables that are done through the city on mostly public safety and health issues, which is we start off with the initial billings, we send monthly statements, we send these also out to the departments for them to help work with the persons that are receiving the bills. We put a newspaper legal notice, which went into the paper on June 28th and July 5th of this year. And on the May, June, and July notices, they also received notice of this public hearing, and they received the 10-day notice on the July statements. Then we come to where we are now, which is this public hearing. And then if we get the authority on this public hearing, we will seek to impose these delinquent amounts on August 8th onto the property roll. So the delinquent fees and charges that are sort of subject to lien, as I said, are really mostly related to public safety and health, which are going to be the solid waste. We have code enforcement and compliance. We have CUPA fees, which is a regulatory environmental permitting, the sidewalk repairs, and this is sidewalks for safety issues that the city has done the work, and wastewater fees for commercial and industrial. So I have before you now the summary of where we stand now and also over the last 2 years. And just please note that since the packet publication, this PowerPoint and the Meeting Central has been updated to reflect payments that have been received as of today. So that is what you see. And we will continue, staff will continue to work with departments and customers to continue to collect payments through our time in August. And so what we're seeking here today is, what we're seeking here today is for council to adopt 2 resolutions, one to impose the liens for non-payment and a second to adopt to overrule protest. Thank you so much. And questions?
So council, do we have any questions on this item? Councilmember Viveros Walton.
Thank you. I'm particularly interested in working with lower income and or fixed income folks who may have inability to pay. Can you tell a little bit about, is there an opt-out process, or how does the city work with folks who are low income or unable to pay for financial reasons?
Yeah, so any of the residents, normally this would be maybe some of the people who are on sidewalk repairs and things like that. Then we work with anyone who has reached out to the city or the departments to make either payment plans or assist them to direct them to like human services or whatever department might be able to find another solution or some sort of payment options for them or assistance programs. And they are not on this. They are typically not on the list.
Seeing no other, Councilmember Aguilar, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. My question is, like, what's the process? Have we sent out letters, multiple letters to these folks that have not submitted payment? And if we did, for those that we are in communication with, are we working out some sort of payment plan with those folks?
Yes, that's a good question. Thank you. We send out monthly reminders and statements and work, depending on the charge, we work with the departments who are mostly in direct communication with the initial, like whoever's receiving that service. And they are mostly in contact with them. We work it out. And so it is the city's last option to impose liens and to collect through property tax. So the city is really generous. Like we work with them, we make all kinds of arrangements, and the staff in the other departments also are working with them and addressing their concerns.
Have we in the past issued any type of subsidy to help fully cover costs for those that were not able to afford but needed the sidewalk fix?
I'm not able to answer that question. I'm sorry, I have to come back to you with that.
Okay. Thank you. Those are my questions.
Okay, seeing no other questions, I'm going to open up the public hearing. It is 7:48 and our hearing is open.
Mr. Mayor, we have no public comment.
So it is 7:48 and I close the public hearing. At this point in time, I'm going to go to Councilmember Baloo for any additional discussion and or motion.
No discussion. I'll move both items. Can I move both at the same time, City Attorney?
Yes, that's fine.
Move both items.
Councilmember Aguilar.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to make sure that we work with those who are, financially impacted or show some sense of that they're unable to pay but willing to work to pay, to make sure that we're addressing that. But I will second Councilmember Baloo's motion.
So I've got a motion by Councilmember Baloo, a second by Councilmember Aguilar. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, let's vote.
Councilmember Bowen?
Yes.
Oh, wait, hold on one second. Councilmember Bowen?
Yes.
Thank you. All votes are in. Councilmember Aguilar, yes. Councilmember Azevedo, yes. Councilmember Baloo, yes. Councilmember Bowen, yes. Councilmember Viveros Walton, yes. Vice Mayor Simon is absent, and Mayor Gonzalez, yes. Motion passes 6-0-1 with Vice Mayor Simon absent.
At this point in time, we'll go to our presentation. We don't have any presentations tonight, so we'll move to our action items. We'll start with 5A, which was the pulled consent calendar item. So 5A, the second reading and adoption of an ordinance amending various chapters of the zoning code as listed in our agenda. We've got Assistant Community Development Director Avalon Schultz presenting this item.
Yes, good evening, council. Apologies for the little snafu there on the agenda. This was not a unanimous vote. This was a vote that was 4-1-2. And this item was to introduce two ordinances that were amending both the municipal code and the zoning code for the community preservation updates, fencing, security, and a few miscellaneous cleanup items. And so at this time, we are recommending that the second reading be held and that the council adopt the two ordinances, 2024-011 and 012, which would amend both the zoning and municipal codes. And those would go into effect 30 days from today or August 14th, 2024. Thank you.
Do we have any questions on this item? So let's move to public comment.
Mr. Mayor, there is no public comment.
So I'll close public comment and bring it back to the council for discussion and or a motion. At this point in time, I will move the item. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
I've got Bowen with a second. The motion by Gonzalez, a second by Bowen. Is there any further discussion? Let's vote.
Councilmember Bowen.
Yes.
All votes are in. Councilmember Aguilar, yes. Councilmember Azevedo, yes. Councilmember Baloo, no. Councilmember Bowen, yes. Councilmember Viveros Walton, yes. Mayor Gonzalez, yes. Motion passes 5-1-1 with Councilmember Baloo voting no and Vice Mayor Simon absent.
At this point in time, we will take item 10E, which is the ERP Master Services Agreement as identified, listed in full greater detail in our agenda packet. We have Chief Technology Officer Michael Seiner presenting this item.
Good evening, Mayor, members of City Council. My name is Michael Seiner. I'm our Chief Technology Officer, and I'm here to provide an update on the city's Enterprise Resource Planning System Selection Project. Enterprise Resource Planning is another word for our integrated financial and human resources management system. Background about the project: our objective is to modernize city operations through a new ERP system. Goals include improving operational effectiveness, optimizing our processes, enhancing our system and integrating those systems, improving productivity by eliminating unnecessary tasks and redundancies, and improving our decision-making capabilities. Another background item: the Budget Task Force identified the need for a new ERP system and recommended an initial $1.4 million appropriation, which Council previously approved. Some current system challenges with our current system. The number one thing is it's aging. And by aging, I mean it's over 20 years old. The current system is called Eden. It's being phased out by the vendor, still supported but barely, limited to compliance updates with no functional improvements. There are also hardware and cybersecurity risks with a system that old that has not kept up with the latest improvements in cybersecurity. And our system has shortfalls and deficiencies, including limited reporting and over-reliance on manual processes. A little bit about our vendor selection processes. Our process: we collaborated with a consultant that has extensive experience in these ERP vendor selection processes and implementations. We partnered with Barry Dunn to identify over 3,000 functional and technical requirements. The effort was 2 years, included planning and issuance of a RFP, request for proposals. We also conducted demonstrations and discovery interviews, engaged with cities and counties with other similar systems. And we received a very strong set of proposals from 6 vendors. And those vendors, one thing to note, those vendors are all cloud vendors. The process for selection was a collaborative effort. It included contribution from multiple departments, including finance, human resources, IT, the CMO's office, as well as public works. The scoring included several rounds. The first round was evaluation and analysis of the technical proposals and shortlisting for demonstrations. Round 2 included the demonstrations. Then we moved on to final rounds of reference checks and cost analysis and best and final offer. The city's selection team identified Workday as the preferred ERP vendor solution, and also identified Cognizant, Robert Half, and Teller, also called Can-AM, as implementation and additional partners. Contract negotiations included confirming scope and approach, development of a realistic timeline, and finalization of the contracts with Workday and Cognizant. Contracts with Teller and Robert Half are still in progress. We're going to look at financial impacts a couple of different ways. This slide shows the total 10-year costs of the implementation and software. So the first 3 items are the Workday subscription and Workday support. So the first 3 are Workday, and then implementation services with our partner Cognizant. Staffing augmentation is designed to assist staff who will be involved with the project in completing their daily routines. We need to augment staff because it's a significant impact on city staff to be successful in these implementations. And then the last 2 items are cashiering system. We're also requesting a contingency of 10%. So here's another look at the 10-year costs year to year, which you will notice that the first 2 years are heavily tilted towards implementation costs, the services involved in implementing the solution. And then by year 4 and 5, the costs are software subscriptions that are annual. Here's a look at our implementation timeline. Few recent things, the scoring of the vendors over the last few months, contract negotiations, this council presentation. And then in August, we will turn efforts to organizational change management, which will include key participation from staff in organizational change management, as well as oversight and assistance from consulting partners. And we will also start familiarizing ourselves with the new environment and training. And then October 2024 to September 2025 represents phase 1. HR payroll implementation, then we'll moving on to finance implementation and project closeout. What we're asking today is authorization, a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into master service agreements with the preferred vendors. With that, I'll take any questions.
Perfect. At this point in time, thanks for the good presentation. Let's go to council members for clarifying questions. Councilmember Aguilar, please.
Thank you, Mayor. And I know in the Finance Committee, we were talking about this, but can you talk a little bit about the RFP process and how we came to the decision that we made, and also where we stuck in between, this is not the lowest bidder, is somewhere in between. Can you talk more about that process so the public is aware of how we came to where we are now?
Yeah, the cost was a factor in the evaluation process. Also, all functionality, the usability of the system, the implementation success, other successful cities. All of that was a factor. And then in comparing costs between vendors, the annual subscription costs were fairly close. So the ongoing costs were very similar. And there is a bit of a difference in the implementation costs, but a lot of those differences were related to a different approach. Like there are vendors that do not provide a lot of implementation services, and they're lower cost, but the effort and staff time, labor involved on the city side is exponentially higher. So that played a factor too. Does the city have the bandwidth and the labor force to be able to implement this and the experience to be able to implement a solution like this on our own? So really, implementation experience became a key factor.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your work, you and your team's work on this. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Councilmember Viveros Walton, please.
Thank you. I just have one question regarding the contract. Is a 10-year contract cycle normal for this type of work?
10 years is a normal lifespan for a system like this. It's a large investment. It's a large impact to staff to implement a solution like this. So 10 years is a roughly typical. I mean, we had the last system for 20 years, but 10 years is average lifespan. Before you would want to go out to RFP and maybe select another system and do another implementation. Hopefully it lasts 20 years, but 10 years is that target, and you want to make sure you lock in pricing and lock in the vendor relationship for that period of time that you intend to use the software. So that's why we looked at 10 years.
I wasn't done with my questions. And I don't know if this is maybe the city manager or the mayor can figure out who answers this question, but this is a pretty significant investment in the way that city operates. And I just kind of want to ask a super basic question. How does this impact the day-to-day operations of the city? And how does this touch residents on their everyday lives as they kind of work with us in applying for jobs? Or I just wanted to get kind of that super basic question answered because it's a pretty significant investment.
So why don't we
start?
So one thing that I just kind of want to frame it up a little bit, because I would like to hear about online payments, online accessibility. I know we've talked about that a lot in finance, and just the ease of getting things done. So if you can at least make sure you cover those two things.
Okay, so I like to think of an ERP system as it's the foundational system in the city. So it's the system that all other systems have to integrate with. It's the system that touches most city employees. It's the system that impacts staff time if the processes are inefficient. So this solution will completely overhaul the way the city does business, just in internal operations, paying vendors, paying employees, procurement activities, all of our HR processes. So when you're utilizing an old system like our current system, Eden, the inefficiencies, they cost money. It's significant impact on labor. So I think that's one answer. Mayor, can you help me out with the second part?
So online payment and the ability for the public to actually interface directly with City Hall.
Right. Online payments are kind of an ancillary thing to this, but like the strategy is to implement the core functionality first and integrate with online payment capabilities, and then look at potentially standardizing all of our online payment capabilities so that they're all the same vendor.
Thank you. Anything else to add to that? Would like to move on to my next question. Okay. So as we head, we're in year one of the biennial budget. We're going to probably start working on this next year. Can you tell us a little bit about how this new system will help us think about department budgets, project budgets, to really think around like how much we're investing in a certain type of, I don't know if this is for the city manager, but I'm really interested just because in my past experience, it's really hard to understand or to see from the budget. We can see the department, the FTE spending, but if we would like to see specifically how much we're looking at investments in homeless services, it's kind of hard to see that. I'm assuming that this system will assist us in that. Can you tell us a little bit about what this system can help us do as we plan for the next budget cycle?
I think it's a great question. I'm going to direct it to Finance Director first, and if that can include an answer on project-based costing, among other things. Well, there you go.
Good evening, Mike Yoon, Finance Director, Council Member Viveros Walton. That's a very good question. What this new ERP system will allow us to do eventually, granted it'll take about 2 years to get there, is it will allow us to accurately track program costs. That's an element in the new chart of account structure that we will need to create. So certainly we can have some more specificity when it comes down to tracking things by program. But when it comes to project accounting, that is going to be a major shift and overhaul from our current system, in that currently we have a system that does not allow for project accounting transcending multiple years. What happens is every year we have to go through a very manual process to carry over those funds into the new year or subsequent years, whereas this new system will allow for that functionality to budget for a project across multiple years.
Thank you. Those are all my questions.
Okay, Councilmember Bowen, I think you have your hand up.
Thank you, Mayor. I really appreciate all of the robust conversations we had about this process in finance, and wanted to speak a little bit to the work you've been doing around staff buy-in. I know that, I've had some familiarity with Workday, but certainly with any sort of ERP transition, getting that change management buy-in to make sure that the users really want to use it and see the value in it. So can you speak a little bit to that?
Yes, organizational change management and ensuring that that staff are bought in, that they're participating in the process, and the implementation is key. We are doing a couple things. One is we're going to get consulting assistance from in the organizational change management area with our consultants that have extensive experience in that field. They will help guide us through the change process, but they can't do the work for us. They can't get the buy-in for us. So we're going to have our core team members, and will involve every department, and have change management, change advocates, change champions in every area, in every functional area. And they will be coordinated by some of our strong consultants in that space.
Fantastic. And there's, when you start looking at different ways you can use a solution, sometimes you don't realize the different functions or ways that it could be applied in the city. And so I know that Workday has a lot of reporting and analytics capacities, but I wonder, in part of that change management and just finding people to learn how to use it, if there's an opportunity to for Workday to work with the city to figure out more creative ways for us to do the work better and to understand the data so that we can actually use it in the ways that Councilmember Viveros Walton was talking about, for example.
Absolutely. Those components are baked into our statement of work. We're going to do extensive analysis with city departments and city employees to discuss not only, operational efficiencies and processes, but reporting and analytic capabilities as well. So those components are baked into the project and will be, very, very important to the project team.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other questions, I want to jump in really quickly. You talked about change management, and I know we've been working at this for a while. You talked about all the requirements, the development of requirements. That involved, I'm assuming, working with a lot of different team members. Is that correct?
Well, yes, core team members from HR and finance, but also other departments as well were involved in development with the consultant, developing all of the functional and technical requirements for the system.
And
so deep dive into everybody's work effort.
As part of that, did that also, I guess, implicitly involve change management as you're letting people understand what the new system might be able to do and exploring that?
Sure. Involving staff early on in not only in the requirements in the initial project planning and requirements gathering, but then also in the selection process, in the demonstrations. We had a core vendor selection team that was day-to-day involved, but we expanded that group tremendously to get feedback from many departments and many team members, so that we could engage them early, and they will be engaged throughout the process.
Thank you. Talk to us a little bit about how you keep this type of project on track.
I mean, it starts here with selecting the right vendor and the right partners. I think it really starts with doing what we've done, which is a good job of understanding what the requirements are and developing a statement of work that can fulfill those requirements. Then so going through an evaluation process and selecting the right partners, the right software solution, the right implementation partners, and then developing a good contract that is fair and can hold all of us accountable to success. And then I think moving on into implementation, your importance shifts to very strong project management on both the vendor and the city side, very strong sponsorship at the highest level in the organization, buy-in, because we will be changing processes. They will always not be those decisions will not always be popular. So having buy-in at the top, and in the city manager's office and the executive team, strong project manager, sticking to scope. There will be on a project like this, there will always be efforts to try to add scope or change things, and trying to stick with the original scope and get the project done on time and on budget. That's key. And then I'll say, like, a strong project team that's committed to the project and to the change management effort, championing it.
Talk to me a little bit about, because I don't think of all the efficiencies and benefits. Will this help us with any sort of identity access management, segregation of duties, controls? And that might be a finance question, might be an HR question. I don't know, but just that general area of control infrastructure.
Yeah, a resounding yes, because really our current tools have very limited capabilities there, like really 20-year-old identity management and controls. So a lot of the controls we have in place are manual, and those can fail because you're relying on humans. So we will have single sign-on, all integrated systems with role-based security that's easy to manage, easy to onboard people, easy to offboard people when they leave the city. So yes, the capabilities is like night and day.
Okay, the last question for you, Workday. Now, for probably most of our residents or anyone who just listens into this meeting, their first reaction might be, what? Who? So can you tell us a little bit about Workday and why it is a preferred solution?
Yeah, Workday is arguably the top, for sure, one of the top cloud ERP vendors in the world. That they started in the HR space, very strong in HR. The finance side of the Workday product has improved incredibly in the last few years. And Workday is a true cloud or software as a service solution. So we don't have any infrastructure on site. We don't do upgrades. Everything is done automatically. The support from IT or HR and finance staff is really more of a functional support, not a technical support. There will be technical work for IT with regard to integrations with other systems, but the supportability, the functionality of the product, and one last thing I'll say, the focus on government clients, Workday has come a long way in the last few years, and they're winning a lot of business all over the state, all over the country. Municipalities, counties are selecting Workday a lot, and we've seen successful implementations in other organizations.
Okay, at this point in time, I don't have any more questions. I don't think council has any more questions. Looking online, Councilmember Bowen, no questions. So let's move to the public comment portion of this agenda item, please.
Mr. Mayor, we have no public comment in person, and we have one public comment online.
Please proceed.
Okay. David Ledbetter, you may unmute yourself.
Hi, this is David Ledbetter. I am with Barry Dunn. I just wanted to offer up that I am able to answer any questions. I think Michael did a wonderful job, but I just wanted to offer up if there are any questions there as well. But that's all I had.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so with that, I'll close public comment and come back to council members for any additional discussion. Councilmember Viveros Walton.
Just wanted to move the item.
We've got a motion from Viveros Walton.
I'll second.
We've got I'm assuming that you wanted to second, Councilmember. And so I think Councilmember Azevedo punched in first. So I'm going to accept that seconding. So I've got a motion from Viveros Walton and a second from Azevedo. Before taking our vote, I think I want to highlight one thing in particular, and this is to any of the vendors that are here watching online. We want you to stick to our scope of work. Set aside money. We want to get the job done for the budget amount of money. These projects have a way of running out of control. And so I think that, the work that we've done over the last 2 years to define requirements, define scope, negotiate a contract that focuses on a very specific scope is important, because we're not a endlessly deep well. And so just to all the vendors, you are on notice. If you don't think you can fulfill the contract, now is the time to step away. I'm excited. This has been a long time coming. We have seen a number of challenges from having antiquated systems. And so I'm very excited. I know council members are excited. So with that, let's move to a vote.
Councilmember Bowen,
Yes.
all votes are in. Councilmember Aguilar, yes. Councilmember Azevedo, yes. Councilmember Baloo, yes. Councilmember Bowen, yes. Councilmember Viveros Walton, yes. Vice Mayor Simon is absent, and Mayor Gonzalez, yes. Motion passes 6-0-1 with Vice Mayor Simon absent.
At this point in time, we will be moving to Our resolution to adopt the tabulation of the stormwater fee vote. We have consultant Cynthia Badenberg presenting the item, as well as we have Rick Simonson from HFNH. Okay, so it will be without Cynthia, this presentation.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Eric Engelbart, Deputy City Manager, standing in for Cynthia Battenberg this evening. Just want to reintroduce you all to our consultant, Rick Simonson, who will be leading tonight's presentation and taking an initial shot at fielding any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Council members. Again, Rick Simonson, Senior Vice President with HFNH. I'm here to present what's been about a year-long process of working with city staff to analyze and potentially adjust the city stormwater fee that's charged to property owners throughout the city. Just a little bit of background. The city did propose this amendment to increase funding. The funding will be used to remove trash and pollutants from rain runoff, to keep the trash and any pollutants out of the receiving waters and getting into the bay particularly. Those funds would help repair and maintain the critical pipes and pump stations of your current system, and also major capital improvements to alleviate any potential flooding in the future. Just a recap of why this was being looked at. The original stormwater fee was adopted by the then council in 1993, and it generated about 1.1 million in revenue. That has not increased since 1993. So I think you'd agree that purchasing power of 1.1 million in 1993 was much more than what you can get for that today. It's less than half of that. So because of that, the Stormwater Fund has been operating at a loss over the years. And it's estimated from the closing of the last fiscal year, which ended just over 2 weeks ago, June 30th, 2024, the fund will be in a negative balance of about 2.5 million. So this is not sustainable for making the necessary improvements. That's why we've studied with the assistance of city staff the necessary revenues and expenses that may be incurred over the next 10-year period. I've provided a few of those figures below. A lot of spending on trash capture devices, which are regulated by the state to be installed. Also pipe cleaning, repaying that $2.5 million shortfall, as well as focusing on about $32 million of projects over the next 10 years, which were deemed to be very high and high priority projects by another consultant that did an assessment analysis on your stormwater system. So this process, as I said, has taken about a year. We first came with our analysis to the full council in March. And in April, we asked to start what is the Proposition 218 process, which is a necessary procedural requirements in order to amend any fee. It is a two-step process. On April 5th, public hearing notices were mailed to all property owners. So this is to alert them that the city is looking to increase this fee, and they have a chance to voice their opinions if it should be done or not. That is the first step. It allows, once those notices are mailed, the 45-day period to hold a public hearing, which the council did in May. And if there's not a majority protest, which is 50% of the property owners actually protesting, if that exceeded the 50%, the process would end there. But at that time, there were less than 50% protests, so you could proceed to the second step. And tonight I'm here to summarize what that second step results were. And that is, that second step is actually mailing ballots to the property owners in which they can vote yes or no. Those ballot packets were mailed out May 24th, and the ballot deadline was last Monday. So on Tuesday, with myself, city clerk, and many staff city members, we counted, recounted, and recounted those votes, and I have the results here for you tonight. So we were sent out a little over 25,000 ballots. and 6,825 valid votes came back. So you received just over 7,000 total. Some that were returned were invalid. That could be really one of two ways. Either they were not signed, ballots must have been signed. If they were not, we set that aside as being invalid. Or in some cases, a ballot was returned signed, but it neither checked the yes or the no box. So we also set those aside. We have counted those that were not signed, but did say yes or no, just so we understand where those would have put the results, and they did not change the results if they were to be included, even though they were not signed. So the votes came in. Of that 6,825, there were 2,965 yes votes, which is 43.4%. 3,860 were no votes, 56.6%. And since the no votes were over the 50% threshold, a majority of the property owners have opposed the fee. Therefore, the current fee will be maintained with no increase. So what we're here tonight, those are the results. We're asking for the council to adopt a resolution accepting the tabulation of the results for San Leandro's 2024 stormwater fee amendment ballot. And because of the results, again, the stormwater fee will not be increased. We're looking for fiscal year 24-25 assessments to be at the current fees. With that, I'll open it up for questions.
At this point in time, do we have any council questions? Seeing none, we'll go to public comment.
Mr. Mayor, we have one hand up online and there's no public comment in person.
Please proceed.
Doug Spalding, you may unmute yourself.
Good evening, council members. I'm disappointed to see that this measure went down. I voted in favor of it. I think the city needs it, but I think it's worth sort of analyzing, maybe why it didn't pass. I think the invalid votes, don't really explain it. This was a landslide. People clearly voted against it. So, when could it be brought up again? I don't know. That's some calculus somebody else has to do. But I do think, in this inflationary time where people are really feeling their pocketbooks get pinched, and when we're being asked actually to fund multiple measures, it wasn't conducive to garnering a yes vote. I think maybe we overreached. Maybe we didn't, quite understand the economic lay of the land exactly. Our city does need more funds. The one thing I appreciated about the way this was framed, I think it was on the stormwater vote, is that it showed exactly how each of us ratepayers would be impacted. So I think going forward that's a good approach, but I also think the approach has to sort of take into account the totality of this fee and other taxes and whatever all is on our plate. So better luck next time to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, there is no more public comment.
So I'll close public comment and come back to Councilmember Azevedo.
Yes, I have a question. What was the total cost that it cost the city to mail out the ballots and for the whole process for the city?
So for the balloting process, it was about $150,000.
Councilmember Aguilar, please.
Thank you, Mayor Gonzalez. And thank you for the presentation. I think, the voters have spoken. A lot of our voters are experiencing tax fatigue. And so, I'm disappointed that this measure didn't pass. And so now we need to figure out other ways to try to get funding for our storm water capture systems. And so the Environmental Protection Agency, the Biden-Harris administration just approved $41 million, 10 of which $10 million is allotted to California for fiscal year 24. So I think there's, some opportunity to try to apply for grants to get some funding to put a Band-Aid over the negative 2.5 operating budget in the negative. But, there's work that we have to do to advocate for some funding. I think that's something that, we've been successful in doing. It's a lot of work on staff's end, but I think that's something that we can try to do to cover the funds, and maybe better luck next time. I think there's another disappointment in with regards to trying to put forth another tax measure. So anyways, those are my comments. Thank you.
Councilmember Viveros Walton.
I'm also disappointed, but it is my understanding that we're one of the, I think, if not one of the few or the first cities to kind of take this stormwater fee up. So we're kind of a guinea pig in terms of Bay Area cities. Is that my understanding correct, or?
They happen sporadically during the years. Most recent, San Mateo did just do one earlier this year and was successful.
Okay.
There's been instances of other communities that have not been successful as well. So it's usually, we see about a 50-50 of what passes and what doesn't. And a lot of times it can have to do with what else is going on with regards to revenue generations within that specific jurisdiction at that time.
Thank you for that. And this question to the city manager, to the finance director. So we will continue to eat this cost. So we're going to be operating at a deficit in order to maintain currently and without even making improvements. How is this going to factor in terms of our, we just had our at the planning session, we had a financial outlook conversation, and this is certainly a big part of the equation. Would like to ask about what, and I know the results just came in, maybe this is a question for another time, but how are we going to maintain and or improve? Are we prioritizing some of the projects that we had identified here that were high priority, high need projects? The west side of the city is prone to flooding every year. It's a serious concern for many parts of the city, but just wondering what the plan is, or we're thinking about the plan. We will be coming back with the plan.
So let's start with Finance Director Yuen, and then you can go with it wherever you want.
Good evening again, Mayor and council members. Mike Yuen, Finance Director. Thank you, Councilmember Viveros Walton, for that question. Ultimately, the sole discretionary fund of the city is the general fund. So when we have instances where there's a special fund or an enterprise fund that is not solvent and is unable to cover costs that it should, the general fund is an eligible source of funding. However, what that means is council will have to make decisions and prioritize what does not get funded with the general fund, should there be a need to cover costs that are, for instance, state mandated, like the trash capture devices. So that is something that this council will have to weigh in on in the near future. But absolutely, it does have ramifications to the general fund and that financial outlook that you saw a few months ago.
Okay, so there are some projects that we have to do no matter what because they're state mandated. Some other projects we had identified as, needing to do, but no money. All right, well, we'll be talking about this later, I think. Thank you for your work. Thank you for all the city staff who invested a year of your time and bandwidth and resources. There's a lot of lessons learned, and we'll move forward. Thank you very much.
I'll go to Councilmember Bowen next.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate Councilmember Viveros Walton's questions and comments. They were on my list. Just want to express disappointment as my other colleagues have, and also appreciate the work and recognize that the projects that are on our list of high, very high, I think when we talked about this before, in an ideal world, we would want to be able to fund all of them. And so, just I think there'll be a lot of lessons learned, and appreciate that we're going to be able to take a lot away from this process and the reality of the current climate that we're in. But this is incredibly important to protect the Bay and to be able to move forward in a responsible way for our environment and the effects of climate change. And so I think that this is, work that we'll need to continue doing. So just really appreciate everybody's effort on this.
Okay, so at this point in time, I'll give my quick thoughts. I think there is absolutely funding out there that we will continue to pursue, right? We go to Washington, we spend our residents' money specifically to pursue getting money. Sometimes to get money, we need to show that we're committed. I know that there's Army Corps of Engineer money out there, but there's oftentimes a need for matching. So I think that we need to keep in mind as a city that part of what we do when we go to Washington is we say, we are committed and this is how we prove that commitment. And so from that perspective in particular, this outcome is disappointing because I think that our residents didn't quite appreciate the gravity of the situation. And we, as a council, we failed to convince them. But we should pursue them. And I think that Councilmember Aguilar is spot on. But I just want to recognize that truth that oftentimes they're saying, and what are you doing on your part to take care of yourself? Second thought that I'll raise is that with what we proposed, we did realize from the very beginning that we were not fully funding everything that needed to be done based on the engineering assessment. And that's difficult because we made a conscious decision as a council to endeavor to collect less than what we needed to collect to maintain the system. And we did it specifically because we were concerned about inflationary concerns. We recognized those challenges. And so I think that adds to the disappointment that we were not pursuing everything that we needed to pursue. In the end, it's our job. It is our job to help residents understand because the need is there. There's not an absence of need. So it is us that need to convince our residents through better use of photos and videos and tours. We'll take people down into the tunnels. Whatever it is that it takes, we need to convince the residents that this is a serious issue because what we do not want there to be a sinkhole that develops because a stormwater pipe has failed and it swallows up a car, it kills somebody and the like. Because we know that it's a ticking time bomb. It is a problem that needs to be addressed, and we're committed to addressing the problem as best we can. But in the end, we have to recognize the truth that there's tens of millions of dollars of need. So thank you for the work that you have done. At this point in time, I will entertain a motion to basically accept the results of the election. Councilmember Aguilar.
To accept the results.
And Councilmember Viveros Walton.
I second that.
Okay, so we've got a motion by Councilmember Aguilar, second by Councilmember Viveros Walton. Please vote.
Councilmember Bowen,
Yes.
all votes are in. Councilmember Aguilar, yes. Councilmember Azevedo, yes. Councilmember Baloo, yes. Councilmember Bowen, yes. Councilmember Viveros Walton, yes. Vice Mayor Simon is absent. Mayor Gonzalez, yes. Motion passes 6-0-1 with Vice Mayor Simon absent.
Okay, at this point in time, let's move to item 10B, which is with respect to our solid waste recycling organics, multiple contracts and authorizing our city manager to engage and execute and set agreements as detailed in our agenda under item 10B. We've got Assistant Public Works Director Nick Tom who will present this item. But before we begin, I do want to say one quick thing, again, just to tie off any sense of there was kind of an implication or assertion of potential impropriety with respect the campaign donations and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to ask city attorney. First, I'll represent a city attorney that I've already asked this question of, Rich Pierota, who is not currently available. So I will ask sitting city attorney Cocatello specifically whether the campaign donation that I received from ACI a couple of years ago, if under the FPPC rules, if that precludes my involvement in this discussion. So going to you, city attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. That's correct. SB 1439 did amend the Political Reform Act to apply what's called the Levine Act to directly elected officials, which relates to contributions of $250 or more. However, that didn't take effect until January 1st of 2023, and that prohibition from participating in those decisions is only for a 12-month period. Contribution occurred outside of that 12-month period, so there is no prohibition from your participation in this item.
Okay, so at this point in time, I will turn to my other council members and ask them, is there anyone who feels like they need to recuse themselves in this situation? And if so, please identify that at this time. Seeing none, we will proceed.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Nick Tom, Assistant Public Works Director. We're going to have a presentation from Felicia Castaneda, consultant with HF&H, who has helped us with our negotiations on this contract.
Thank you, Nick. Good evening, Mayor and council members. Thank you for having me today. You've heard from me quite a bit over the past couple of years related to the solid waste services procurement process. We are at the very end of this process today. And so what we were asking for from you today is approval of the 3 agreements, which we discussed last month and which I'll go over briefly today as well. So just really quickly, we're going to go over an overview and background of the process so far. I'll explain briefly the final collection services and the final post-collection services that have been agreed upon by both contracting parties. The scope of services has not significantly changed from the last time we met in June. So it's the same services that we talked about in detail in that June council meeting. We'll also talk about the cost and rate impacts and then the implementation schedule. So first, just a brief overview of how far we've come. This has been about a almost 3 year process. We've come to council a number of times to approve the procurement process, which was a 2-step process. So we were negotiating with ACI for collection services and then put out an RFP for post-collection services. And we received proposals from both Waste Management and ACI for those services. As I mentioned, in June, we came to council with an explanation of those scope of services in detail, which I'll review shortly. Today, we're here in the hope that council will take action to approve the final contracts that have been negotiated and agreed upon by both parties for services to start on February 1st of 2025. So the finalized collection services provided by ACI will include collection of solid waste, recycling, and organic materials from residents and businesses throughout the city. The new contracts include enhancements to education and outreach as well as customer service. They also provide for additional new services, including community cleanups, diversion services at city events, increased bulky item collection for residents in San Leandro, as well as servicing street cans throughout the city. The new contract will also include textile collection and increased services at the Washington Plaza area in downtown. A couple notes on some items that were brought up at the last council meeting. So first, related to trash enclosure requirements. Enclosures are required for new developments and redevelopment projects. However, any further enclosure requirements may be considered through council action and municipal code amendments. So we have seen there are some other jurisdictions that have municipal codes that require either trash enclosures or locks, and that is done through the municipal code. So if council is interested in that, that's an avenue that they could look into. Similarly, for lock services will continue under the new contract for a fee But any mandatory lock requirements, that would be something that council could consider through additional action and again, municipal code amendments. I will say that, again, something that was brought up last time related to locking containers and trash enclosures was related to edible food recovery. SB 1383 does have very robust edible food recovery requirements, and the city works with Stop Waste, the county agency, to implement those requirements and to try and recover as much edible food as possible before it gets disposed of so that it can reach hungry people. Another item that I wanted to address from the last meeting is hazardous waste. So curbside battery collection and used oil collection are included in the new contract. Other household hazardous waste is handled by the county through various drop-off programs. There are county facilities in Oakland, Livermore, Hayward, and Fremont that accept household hazardous waste for free. So that includes things like CFL light bulbs, which contain mercury. So those can be dangerous if they end up in the trash for both workers and the public. And it also includes other things like paint or any household chemicals, cleaning chemicals that aren't empty. Those are types of things that you can drop off at the household hazardous waste facilities. ACI's education program will include robust information about proper household hazardous waste disposal, and that'll go out to residents and businesses on an annual basis. Moving on to the post-collection services. So these services have been broken up between both ACI and Waste Management. ACI will provide the transfer and transport of organics, solid waste, and recyclable materials. And they will also provide the processing of those recyclable materials. Waste Management will be responsible for accepting solid waste for disposal and accepting organics and construction and demolition debris for processing. We have also included in the Waste Management Agreement assistance to help the city with their SB 1383 compost procurement requirement and an annual public drop-off event for San Leandro residents to bring materials to the Davis Street Transfer Station to drop off. So finally, the rate impacts of these new services. So the existing rate that you see here, that 4043, that is the new rate that went into effect at the beginning of this month, July 1st. And that rate is for a 32-gallon cart service of a single-family home. So that's sort of the average rate that we see for San Leandro residents. The new rate that we will see with implementation of this these new contracts would be 4241, and that represents about a 4.9% increase. So that increase is due to the enhancements to the current contracts, such as enhancements to the public education and outreach and customer service programs, as well as the new services that will be provided, the increased bulky services, street litter service, diversion services at city events, and many of those other ones that I spoke about before. So this new rate would go into effect on February 1st, 2025. There will be a CPI adjustment at the start of this contract to bring these dollars, which are in today's dollars, up to those 2025 dollars. And then the annual adjustments would start occurring on July 1, 2026. So you would have a little over a year before you would see the next CPI adjustment. So schedule and next steps. If council chooses to approve the agreements tonight, the next step would be to fully execute these agreements with both parties, with ACI and Waste Management. Over the next several months, the contractors would prepare for the new services, which would be set to start on February 1, 2025. And with that, I will take any questions.
Okay, so we'll go to council for questions at this point in time. Do I have any questions? Okay, Councilmember Azevedo, please.
Yeah, I got a question. It's for the city attorney. If a council member or mayor or someone's received contributions from ACI, are they supposed to recuse themselves for voting on this contract? The reason why I say that, because I got a check for $1,000 from ACI, but I returned it. I didn't accept it, but I'm just wondering in case other people.
So under the SB 1439, the Levine Act provides that if a contribution is received within 12 months of a decision of $250 or more, then the official that received that contribution cannot participate in that decision. So it depends on timing, but also if the contribution is returned, then it's not relevant.
Do we have any other questions? I have one question. You talked about household hazardous wastes. We currently, under the ACI contract, have, I'm assuming, a benefit where once a year, maybe twice a year, they send us a flyer. We bring CFLs and other items like compact discs or DVDs or things like that to the site there on Aladdin. Will that continue or will that now end?
So the current household hazardous waste program is managed by the county. So there won't be any drop off available of hazardous waste at the ACI facility, but there will still be available drop off for household hazardous waste at those other locations throughout the county. And that would be free for residents.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
perhaps you are thinking of household hazardous waste collection events that we have held at the Public Works Courtyard. About once a year, we have partnered with the county to collect waste at the courtyard.
I know that I've gone to the Aladdin facility, but the city may have held it there in conjunction with ACI, just as an ease of location. All that I really care about is, do our residents need to go to Hayward to get rid of their compact fluorescent light bulbs and DVDs and other household waste, or do we intend to continue offering the same service that we provide right now to the residents, regardless of who provides it?
We intend to continue to partner with the county to bring an event into San Leandro once a year.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions, we'll go to public comment on this item.
Mr. Mayor, we have one public comment in person and no public comments online. Chris Valbusa.
Good evening. I'm Chris Valbusa, General Manager and Partner with ACI, and I've been with the company for over 17 years. I first want to thank the Mayor and Council members for the opportunity to be here tonight with new contracts for you to consider to have ACI continue providing recycling, organics, and solid waste collection and recycling processing for the next 10 plus years. In April of 1999, ACI was formed by a local ownership group acquiring San Leandro Disposal Company. And during the past 25 years, ACI has continues to provide reliable, cost-effective service to San Leandro residents and businesses. Our entire team, some of who are present tonight, including our President and CEO and company founder, Louis Pellegrini, our CFO, and with the company since its inception, Kent Kenny, our Operations Manager, Bernie Camara, our Sustainability Programs Manager, Laura McCoyan, our Outreach and Communications Specialist, Kelly Valbusa, and our Recycling Facility Manager, Ernesto Werdigui. We take great pride in the work we do in San Leandro by showing up every day, not just to ensure removal of materials placed in containers, but to ensure that the residents and businesses in San Leandro experience a reliable service provider, especially during difficult periods such as the one we all experienced during COVID. And I am extremely proud to say that our company never missed a day of collection or recycling processing during those years for our service area, thanks for the dedication of our 275 ACI employees. San Leandro is a special place for ACI, being the city where we started, and the city we continue to call our home for our base of operations. This procurement process started over a year ago. The city's procurement team, led by your city manager, Janelle, and our ACI team have worked diligently to provide you with these comprehensive agreements We look forward to providing these expanded services to San Leandro customers, and we ask for your support in approving these new contracts.
Thank you. Your time is up. Mr. Mayor, we have one hand up online now.
Please proceed.
San Leandro Chamber, you may unmute yourself.
Hello, everybody. Good evening. It's Emily Grego, President and CEO of the San Leandro Chamber of Commerce. I just wanted to say tonight that I'm really happy to see ACI here and hopefully getting this contract approved. They've been a longtime member of the San Leandro Chamber of Commerce, of the San Leandro community, the business community. They've been a longtime supporters of so many organizations through town, and their commitment to the business community is evident. So I hope that you all do approve this contract. We're lucky to have a company like ACI in San Leandro, and I'm just hoping that this goes through this evening. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, there's no more public comment.
Okay, so I'll close public comment and bring it back to council for discussion. Councilmember Viveros Walton.
Thank you. I really wanted to commend staff and all of the people involved. I saw some of the things, most of the things, if not all, that we chatted about at our last meeting, including education. I'm really, really, really excited about expanding bulky pickups and multifamily housing. It was expressed by members of the public. It was a huge gap in service, and I'm really happy to see that here. Thank you for your work. Thank you for taking our feedback. Okay. Well, once the comment is over, I'd like to move the item.
At this point in time, I'll go to Councilmember Aguilar.
Thank you, Mayor Gonzalez, and thank you for the presentation. I think it's great that we're working with both organizations. I just wanted to commend you for the work done. I know this has been a long process, a really long process, but I'm glad that we're able to come to an agreement and work together. I'd like to second this item as soon as I'll second the item since Viveros Walton made the motion.
Do we have any other discussion? So I would like to second the fact that we have got expanded services. I think we've heard from a number of constituents, and we've heard from the Council of the Endless drumbeat of we need to do things to handle more effectively dumping, illegal dumping, and that we believe that we understand some of the root causes of that dumping. That analysis has been done by the county, by Stop Waste, and by others, and that we've expanded service. Everyone's paying just a little bit more so that we're able to address some of those root causes of illegal dumping. So we're very grateful for the negotiation that's happened to be able to provide greater service for the benefit, since we know that we are endeavoring to beautify San Leandro. So this isn't just about disposing waste. It's really about meeting a strategic council priority of beautifying San Leandro. So thank you for all the work that you've done. So with that, I've got a motion by Council Member Viveros Walton and a second by Council Member Aguilar. Seeing no further discussion, let's vote.
Councilmember Bowen,
Yes.
all votes are in. Councilmember Aguilar, yes. Councilmember Azevedo, yes. Councilmember Baloo, yes. Councilmember Bowen, yes. Councilmember Viveros Walton, yes. Vice Mayor Simon is absent, and Mayor Gonzalez, yes. Motion passes 6-0-1 with Vice Mayor Simon absent.
Okay, so at this point in time, we're going to take our 2-hour, or a break that happens at the 2-hour mark. It will not be a 2-hour break, as we have a lot to accomplish. So we will take a 10-minute break. Okay, let's reassemble. Please take your seats. We're continuing with item 10C. We have Deputy City Manager Eric Engelbart presenting this item. Please proceed.
Story of my life. Good evening, Mayor and council members. Eric Engelbart, Deputy City Manager with the City Manager's Office, here tonight to continue the discussion about the exploration of a potential November 2024 revenue measure. Just a brief, quick overview of the items I'm going to cover tonight. We'll start off with a little bit of background information, some highlights of that survey, tracking poll results, some key takeaways, and then we'll conclude things with staff recommendations and any next steps. Before I dive into the information, I also want to note that our consultants from Bonnie Moss with Clifford Moss, as well as Brian Godby from Godby Research, who supported the scientific tracking poll, are with us tonight via Zoom if any questions arise for which their feedback would be of assistance. Just a little bit of background. Most of this information should be familiar to most of you all. You may recall last July 10th, 2023 at the council meeting, your council did receive a summary update of the various financial challenges that our city is facing, some of the unfunded needs, as well as the history of the various local revenue measures that San Leandro voters have authorized over the past decade or so. Council then discussed various potential prospective revenue options, and you ultimately directed us to explore the viability of a November 2024 measure. Based on that direction, this past December, a scientific poll was conducted whereby, thanks to the support of Godby Research, we tested 3 revenue measures. If you recall, we tested a general obligation bond, a parcel tax, as well as a utility user tax increase. And then this past April, you all received the results of that scientific survey work. And then ultimately, council directed us to continue to engage the community and further explore the viability of a measure. And then based on that direction, this past June, we distributed both what we classify as a two-way mailer, which was sent out to likely voters, which invited feedback from the community either online or via return mail. And then we conducted another scientific tracking poll that was winnowed to 2 possible measures, either a UUT increase or a parcel tax. You can see on the screen before you some of the preliminary results that came back through that two-way mailer. And noting that this is not a scientific survey, this was just another avenue to solicit public feedback. I won't go through all these numbers on the screen. You can see before you, but you'll notice certain service areas that are highlighted in bold text, which are kind of thematic, and we'll also see repeat themselves in that scientific tracking poll as well. Here we kind of can dig in a little further on the results of that tracking poll that was conducted last month. Before diving into those numbers, though, I do want to share some overall themes that we observed through that tracking poll research. And a lot of the feedback and results that we're seeing here in San Leandro are mirrored across the region, and other communities that are surveying their community residents are seeing kind of similar results. And just at a high level, one notable thing is that voter sentiment doesn't always align with broader economic indicator data. As many of us know, currently, unemployment rates are continue to be low. Residents are seeing increase in residents, and people throughout the region are seeing increased wages. Overall inflation levels are actually stabilizing, and there's still generally positive economic growth. And actually, you can see that headline from a New York Times article a number of months ago, which kind of encapsulates that sentiment. So there's kind of that disconnect between economic data, but the way that just the kind of sentiment of voters. And you can see there on the screen those various numbers to those questions and the way in which those numbers have declined from our scientific survey work that was done in December versus the one done in June. Other important information that was derived from the tracking poll, you can see those service priorities. Again, these should look familiar and are consistent with that prior survey work, and that's taken place. And you can see there, of course, we have the repair and maintaining critical public safety infrastructure, maintaining our city streets, repairing potholes, maintaining police patrols in the neighborhoods, and addressing homelessness. And kind of this last two bullet points are kind of the culmination of all this work, and which really informs the staff recommendation. And you can see that essentially neither the parcel tax nor that utility user tax increase appeared to be viable. Both of those are falling short of the necessary thresholds, which are shown in the brackets at the bottom. So all of that feedback kind of culminates in our recommendations tonight. You can see the agenda packet included that draft minute order with basically kind of a binary choice before you all tonight. Either option A is to cease all efforts associated with placing a measure on the ballot, or option B would be to direct us to schedule a special meeting for next week to place a specified measure on the ballot. And based upon all the information I presented just a few moments ago, we are recommending option A, which is to cease all efforts associated with placing a measure on the upcoming November ballot. With all that said, in terms of next steps, we do think that all this work we've done does provide an opportunity to thank the community for sharing its feedback and engaging with the city. As noted earlier, we did have robust engagement. We saw very strong numbers of people who were engaged, who were reading the materials and providing their candid feedback. So this is an opportunity to thank them for providing that feedback, letting the community know that the city is listening to their feedback. With all that said, though, as noted earlier in the comments at this evening's council meeting, the needs haven't gone away and are not going away. And so we will need to continue to do public outreach and engagement and sharing that story of need and exploring additional creative solutions to address those needs in the future. And so with that concludes staff's presentation, but happy to answer any questions you all may have.
Seeing no questions, I will move to public comment.
Mr. Mayor, we have no public comment.
So I'll close public
Oh,
comment.
no, sorry. We have no public comment in person.
Okay,
Now we have no public comment at all.
thank you. So I will close public comment and move back to council for any final discussion or a motion. Councilmember Aguilar, please.
Thank you, Mayor Gonzalez. Thank you, Eric, for the presentation. I think, like I had mentioned earlier, we listen to our voters, and I think that our voters are probably experiencing tax fatigue. So I think we wait and see how things go over the next couple of years. But in the meantime, try to figure out how we're going to fund our unfunded CIP projects. If that means working with our Department of Transportation at the federal level, advocating for funding to see if we could somehow find $300 million somewhere. So it looks like we have a lot of work to do. But I think, a lot of us have great resources and great staff to work together to try to figure out how to fund these unfunded liabilities. And so, I hear the voters loud and clear, and, thank you for working with the organization to conduct the polls and figure out where we stand and not go out and put a measure on the ballot that's going to be unsuccessful. So I appreciate all the work that you all have put into this. I know it's been a long time, a long, arduous process, and many meetings and hearings and what have you. So I would like to move this item and move forward with not putting this measure on the ballot.
Thank you. So I've got Councilmember Escovedo next, please.
Yes, I concur with what Councilmember Aguilar said. I talk to the voters every day, and they don't want more taxes right now. That's why I voted against to even explore this right now. Because I could tell from the voters that they don't want to raise taxes right now. Taxes are high enough right now. So I'll second this.
Seeing no other discussion, I'll just have Councilmember Bowen online. So thank you, Councilmember. You're next.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to acknowledge all the work that's been done to explore this. You know, when we had our workshop in 2023 and talked a lot about all of our unfunded liabilities, we gave, as a council, direction to staff to be creative and explore ways to find resources. And while, yes, certainly there are opportunities out there with DOT and other agencies that I hope that we will continue to explore, this is a huge lift, and there are real projects and needs that we have in the city that we do have to address. And so I just want to make sure that we'll continue to recognize where we're at, while we also recognize where the community is at, and continue to work towards filling that gap. I just really do want to express gratitude for the work that staff has been doing, and also for our consultants in the efforts that they put in to be able to outreach to the community, because this is part of the process. And I'm confident that there are plenty of learnings from it, and we have to be realistic about where we're at the local and national level. So I appreciate the work, and I hope that we'll find a path forward that can truly meet the needs of the city.
Okay, seeing no other comments, I'll offer my comments quickly. I think that we continue to experience shortfall in revenue relative to the unfunded liabilities that we have. I think Councilmember Bowen said it perfectly. We made a decision as a council. We voted to specifically prioritize staff being creative and pursuing funding opportunities. We have spent a significant amount of time in Washington advocating for monies. Same thing in Sacramento. We recently announced that we were successful in Sacramento with respect to our Mulford Marina Library, to the tune of $2 million. We were successful in getting money for the Navigation Center to the tune of $10 million plus, more than $10 million. So there is significant advocacy work that's taking place. We are pursuing grants that are on the order of tens of millions of dollars. But the truth of the matter is that we have many, many needs. And so we as a council will need to work creatively, pursuing additional funding, supporting those efforts, tapping into the relationships that we have, and also helping to continue to educate the public around the ways in which we're using their money effectively. Because ultimately it is our responsibility to use the public's money well, and to make sure that the public understands what those opportunities are, even if they can't directly see them. So we need to make it tangible. We need to make it real. I think we did a good job with something like the ERP system, because that's something that's very hard to understand. And so I'm grateful for the investment that we've chosen to make, because it's an abstract idea, but it's fundamentally going to transform how we do business as a city. And so I continue to encourage us to tackle those difficult challenges. With that, I will call the question. I've got a motion by Councilmember Aguilar with a second by Azevedo.
Councilmember Bowen,
Yes.
all votes are in. Councilmember Aguilar, yes. Councilmember Azevedo, yes. Councilmember Baloo, yes. Councilmember Bowen, yes. Councilmember Viveros Walton, yes. Vice Mayor Simon is absent. And Mayor Gonzalez, yes. Motion passes 601 with Vice Mayor Simon absent.
At this point in time, we will move to item 10D, which explores a resolution to approve and authorize the city manager to negotiate and execute a memorandum of understanding with Alameda County Fire. And this is with respect to the potential alternative response unit, something we've been exploring for a couple of years at least, maybe 3 years. And so we've got some we got some paper, and we've got some pen and numbers and details. So come on up. I think, who's going to lead us in this? Director Lobadan? I'm assuming that you start us off. Let's see. And then you'll be joined by Paige Bowie, right? Perfect. So why don't you kick us off, Director?
Thank you and good evening, Mayor, members of council and public. I'm Jessica Lobanon, and before I give a brief background and hand over the presentation to Chief Bowie, I did want to welcome Chief McDonald up here briefly just to say a few words.
Evening, Mayor Gonzalez, members of the San Leandro City Council. I'm Willie McDonald, Alameda County Fire Chief, and I really wanted to be here to express my appreciation and our partnership to the council in working on this project, this program, identifying programs that are out there that we could research and identify and evaluate for their effectiveness, and working with the council, working with the city manager's office, working with the city staffs, city community services, as well as the police department, in trying to find a solution that we could bring forward to the community to provide services for needed services for our community. And I just, again, really wanted to express my appreciation for this opportunity to bring this forward, the recommendation that we've made, and thank the council for supporting Alameda County Fire and thanking you for allowing us to serve you for these years since 1995. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. So to provide a very brief background on this item, staff have been working with council and members of the public to explore an alternative response mental health unit since 2020, when we received direction to explore a model partnering with fire to implement mental health services in the community. Some major milestones: October of 2021, staff presented several different models for council consideration. In March of 2022, the San Leandro Safe Initiative was created to help unify human services, police department, and fire. In February of 2023, launching the mental health response unit was formally integrated into the city's 3-year work plan. And in February of 2024, the mental health provider was selected in partnership with Alameda County Fire. So I'll now turn it over to Chief Bowie to take on the rest of the presentation.
Thank you, Jessica, and good evening, Mayor, City Council. Paige Bowie, Division Chief, Alameda County Fire. So I'll give a program overview. It's a collaborative pilot between ACFD, City of San Leandro, and community providers to more efficiently utilize the relevant healthcare services to meet behavioral health and medical needs of our community. Additionally, I just want to further explain that this will be instead of law enforcement, with law enforcement, after law enforcement. That was a big component of this program. It'll be staffed with unarmed responders trained to de-escalate crisis situations and connect residents to community-based resources. And one of the main goals will be reducing over-reliance on traditional law enforcement and EMS responders, and instead dispatching professionals who are equipped to handle these kind of situations. And free up our traditional first responders to go to more pressing public safety concerns and medical emergencies. So we have 4 program goals. Reduce police response to 911 calls related to behavioral health requests, deliver an appropriate and timely response to behavioral health calls that meet the individual's needs, increase the number of unnecessary ER visits, and bridge and facilitate service connections for individuals. So we took a lot of time developing these goals, and you'll see them again later, but I just want to briefly talk about them on a general way and what to expect with this program. Right now in San Leandro, if you call 911 for a person experiencing a mental health crisis, police are going to respond. Whether or not they have the tools or resources necessary to handle the situation, they're going to go. Many of these faces are familiar. We see them day after day, week after week on the streets, and they're in a desperate situation. Fire, police, EMS, we often leave these calls heartbroken in a way because we cannot provide help. our police force right now, they're the largest unlicensed mental health care providers out there in city after city. They are doing this and they're not necessarily given the tools they need, the resources they need. Neighboring agencies around us, Oakland, Oakland, Pleasanton, Alameda, many cities are starting these units because they see the need. And I'll just say that responding on these calls, we often must go to the same patient over and over again. It is a long game. We will have to invest in progressive engagement to get people to voluntarily engage in services. And that is what it takes. We like to say the right response for the right person at the right time. So we firmly believe in this program, but I just want to lay expectations on what we will actually be doing out there. We are going to collect data to try to provide this and prove what we're doing, but that is the nature of how this goes. We won't solve this overnight. It is just one tool that the city and county are using for this. But we do see a future where 911 consists of police, fire, EMS, and mental health response. That's the direction right now as a nation. So details. I could talk a lot more about this, but briefly for time. So it's an 18-month pilot program, coordination between fire, human services, police, and community providers, as mentioned before. The unit will be based out of a San Leandro fire station, but will be mobile during operating hours. Initially, we have funding for 40 hours a week, so it'll be 4 days a week and 10-hour shifts. We will try to staff as much as possible based on the data we got from San Leandro PD dispatch on when these calls can be available. And we will have access to 2 beds and a medically supported emergency shelter. Staffing of the unit will be 1 ACFD EMT or paramedic, a licensed nurse practitioner or other licensed medical practitioner, and a community health outreach worker. So 3 people will be on the unit. You may see in the budget, you will see that it calls for 2 community health outreach workers, and that is to allow for case management and follow-up care, which is critical to addressing these needs. So the staffing model allows for direct patient care, ability to prescribe and follow up on treatment, referrals made, and then the case management part. So how can you call this unit? Multiple ways. San Leandro PD dispatch will be triaging these calls for service and then transferring the appropriate calls to our regional communications center to dispatch the unit. But in addition, police on scene, fire on scene, or medical can request the unit if they recognize they're with a citizen or patient that might benefit from the services. Anyone can call 911, like I said, or the unit will be mobile. So if they see somebody in need, they can also stop and try to help that person if they think they might benefit. Okay, next 2 slides, I'll talk about eligible scenarios and I'll also talk about exclusionary criteria. So here we go. Eligible scenarios: individual experiencing suicidal thoughts, thinking of harming themselves or has minimally harmed themselves, person who is in emotional distress, families, neighbors, or individuals who are arguing or in need of mediation. Individual known to or strong suspicion that they are experiencing hallucinations, psychosis, etc. People are coming to the attention of others because of their behavior. Quite a common phenomenon we see in San Leandro. So exclusionary criteria. We studied other jurisdictions and also gathered data from San Leandro PD, as I mentioned. So a lot of this has been recommended to us and based on the call types that we already have in dispatch. So a lot of this revolves around safety concerns. Medical emergencies, the subject is not present on scene. There's a gun on premises, physical threats made, current or known history of physical violence, property destruction, current self-harm, current suicide attempt, or threatening suicide with a plan and means for a weapon. So those will all be calls that this unit will not respond, at least not initially. Briefly to mention metrics, these are our 4 goals, as you'll recognize. In your attachment MOU, there are 49 data points, all tied back to these 4 goals. Where we are now, so in February of this year, we selected a provider partner. In a couple weeks, the Alameda County Board of Supervisors will receive our recommendation for the vendor selection, and it will become public once Alameda County Board of Supervisors approves the agreement. After that, we will begin operations as soon as we can. as soon as we can do training, community outreach, and everything else that we need to do once we get approval. And I did not mention yet our ongoing community and staff education and training. We will be partnering with the city extensively for community outreach to make sure everybody is aware of this unit. We'll partner with the safety ambassadors as well. They have a good marketing campaign. So we'll partner with them when we can. But I'll turn it back to Director Lobanon for some final comments, and we'll take questions.
Thanks, Chief Bowie. I did just want to note and clarify that this evening we're seeking a recommendation to move forward, but that the funds are already appropriated for this item. The majority of funding for this item is funded through one-time American Rescue Plan Act funds. And additionally, we are continuing to seek outside funding for this through our legislative partners.
Okay, so at this point in time, we will take questions to clarify the MOU or any part of the presentation. Questions, please. Councilmember Aguilar.
Thank you for the presentation. My question is, with regards to staff that is required with regards to this program, who is able to 5150 person experience a mental health breakdown? If they are going in mental health breakdown, whether suicide or trying to harm themselves, who is able to do that?
On the unit?
The unit.
The nurse practitioner or licensed, they will put them through the training.
And someone who other than the fire department on the unit who arrives on scene, the police department also has.
Correct.
Okay. And what are the hours of operation of this?
So the 10-hour days will likely be somewhere around, we have not firmed that up, starting around 7 or 8 in the morning. We have to provide for time for paperwork and other things for the team before and after they go on the road, but wheels on the ground probably around 8 or 9 in the morning for 9 hours.
And do we have data? Well, you're trying to collect data of when folks experience.
Yes. So, and the data does support that, probably around 9 a.m. to about, if we could go till 10 p.m., that would be perfect. Not perfect, but we would capture more potential calls. We just don't have the funding. So we'll try to go as late as we can to 5 or 6 in the evening right now.
Thank you.
Coming to Councilmember Blue, please.
Mr. Mayor, thank you, Chief and Chiefs. A couple of follow-up questions. You mentioned a bed at a mental health center having like a dedicated bed. Where is that? Is that the one in Hayward?
No, this would be in Alameda moving to Oakland, I believe.
So in the past, when we looked at the data at the police department, calls coming into the 911 center, it wasn't an overwhelming number of people experiencing a mental health crisis themselves that were calling in saying, I'd like some help. In fact, I think it was 98% required a first response by the police to get there and stabilize the scene. Have we looked at recent data, or do we know if any of that has changed?
I would have to double check percentages. I would say it's less than significantly less than that at this point. I can't quote exact.
It was quite high when I'm all, wow, that's surprising even for me. And I was in the business for a while. When does the drawdown begin? We say we want to do this. When does the money start transferring from San Leandro's fund over to the county?
You mean to pay for their portion?
Yeah, that might be Director Lobadon's question. I don't know, but.
Yeah, so we've structured our agreement to be based on reimbursement for actual services rendered. So once the service begins, then Alameda County Fire would submit reimbursement to the city.
Thank you. And you said, so I guess it would be after the Board of Supervisors meets at the very earliest. You said that majority of the funding was one-time funding that was already budgeted. So do you know the amount? Because it's not to exceed 1.3. I was under the impression it was 750 of our general fund and 750 ARPA, but that adds up to 1.5, not 1.3.
I believe it's 725,000 in American Rescue Plan Act funds and 625,000, somewhere around there, in general funds.
I'll save the hardest money question for last. But before that, is there any plan in this plan? I just thought of this tonight, or I would have front loaded you. I apologize. Is there any plan in this plan to offer advanced training for our police officers by the specialists that are in this ARU? Has that even been talked about?
No, that has not yet been talked about.
And I know they have post requirements where they go through this minimum, but I think that street experience is very valuable and maybe that's something that we'll talk about in round 2 of this. And the last question is, what happens at the end of the year when the money runs out? That's probably for Director Lobadan or City Manager Cameron. I don't know.
So right now, this is the funding that we have. We, as I mentioned, will continue to explore external funding. We are working with our legislative partners to seek $1.5 million for this project specifically. That sometimes takes a bit of time. So it's possible that we would pilot this program and then towards the end of it, have additional external funding.
Thank you. Those are my questions, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so I'm also going to see if City Manager has something to add on that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To answer your question, Councilmember Blue, because this is a pilot program, staff will be back to council with a report on the outcome of the results of this pilot program with updates. And from there, because correct, Director Lobadan is correct, we do not have funding right now beyond this pilot program. If the results of the pilot are something that the council believes is sufficient, then we will be requesting budget in future budget periods. If we get direction from council that the results were not sufficient and they'd like us to look at something else, we would be able to do that as well.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, beg your pardon. I did have one final question. What is 5585 of Welfare and Institutions Code?
It's similar to 5150, but I believe for youth.
For what?
For under 18.
Oh,
I would have to double check.
thank you.
It's my first.
That's correct.
Okay, at this point in time, I'll go to Councilmember Bowen, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chief, for the presentation. You spoke a little bit to some of the other jurisdictions having similar programs. Can you speak to any of the collaboration you're doing or data analysis around advocacy of the programs there? And if there's a plan to continue to explore and learn from other jurisdictions as well?
Yes, good question. These programs, they're all done slightly differently depending on the area and how they operate. Both Alameda City runs theirs with 2 paramedics. The fire department runs it. They operate in their own area and are bound by different rules than we are in the county. So the program looks quite different than ours. And yes, I've been reaching out to Hayward, to Pleasanton, to San Ramon to learn from them. Most of the data collection, though, has been internal with San Leandro PD and gathering the call data that we've got from them, and then learning from other agencies through the technical assistance we've received from Harvard. They're supplying us with some of the lessons learned from some of the other larger agencies, Chicago, Allegheny County, Phoenix, on best practices. So and we have applied for another year of technical assistance grant with that, which will help if we get it. We'll find out this week. But ongoing collaboration and learning, as well as with, of course, county resources. They're, of course, the looming large agency here, and they have offered to help, and they're excited to see this program and want to help in any way they can. They've expressed support.
Fantastic. I mean, maybe there's an office I can stop by to nudge things along a little bit since I am out here in Boston. I do really appreciate the data collection and wanted to ask a little bit more around that, especially with SLPD. Obviously we're going to collect along the way and then at the end look at the pilot as a whole. But can you speak to the schedule for analyzing the data and making any iterations along the way to ensure we're meeting those 4 metrics that were outlined?
Yes, before I answer that, I'll let Jessica, did you have one more thing to add on that at all? On the, okay. We will provide quarterly reports to the city. Initially that's in the MOU, responding back with performance. Initially, we will be internally looking at this very closely, weekly, most likely. A lot of these programs have had to iterate a lot in the beginning, just based on their findings and what they're responding to and the calls that are going on. It does take some time for dispatchers to get comfortable recommending the unit there's a lot of new things happening for a lot of people that we've learned. So the beginning will be, I believe, I anticipate a lot of learning, but we do plan to give quarterly reports back to the city.
Fantastic. And along with those quarterly reports, this is tied to the question around funding. So it might be Director Lobadan that can answer this one, but am I correct in understanding that we are currently seeking some outside funding opportunities so that there would potentially not be a lapse in funding? Obviously, we'll continue to make decisions along the way, but if we find this to be really efficacious, then there would not be a lapse in the program services.
That would definitely be our goal, is that we could seek any external funding to ensure that there was no gap. But some of the sources that we are looking to partner with, we've already sought funding from them, and there's varying wait times or varying lengths of time when we find out about the funding being awarded.
Excellent. And can you give me a timeline about some of you said that we'll get a presentation later on the ongoing community and staff education portion?
I would imagine once we get approved here in the Board of Supervisors, I would say in the next 2 to 4 months.
Okay. And then once that happens, then we'll be able to start that process of getting information out to the community?
Yes.
Excellent. And I do want to just appreciate everybody who's been working on this. As somebody that has had to call SLPD to address a mental health, behavioral health issue, I think that it's incredibly important for us to think about all the different populations that we can serve, and for families who feel like they don't have a lot of options or are looking for help. I think this is going to be incredibly beneficial for the community, and is a really strong message that we're sending, that mental health is incredibly important. So I really just appreciate all the work you've all been doing on this.
Do we have any other questions? Okay, so I've got some questions. In particular, I want to start with staffing. So we've got 3 personnel. We've got an EMT paramedic, and it can be either one, right? So it'd be ACFD staff.
Correct.
Are we paying incrementally for that? Will we be billed for that person?
We are paying for the EMT or paramedic. Alameda County Fire is that portion.
We are not augmenting the number of people at ACFD to deal with this?
No.
Okay, perfect. And then for the prescriptions, part of the service that could be delivered was the prescriptions could be issued by the personnel as a possible benefit. Do we know who is able to issue prescriptions?
Nurse practitioners can issue prescriptions.
Okay. Because the contract says a licensed nurse practitioner or other licensed medical practitioner. I'm thinking about like a licensed social worker. I don't know if that would qualify as a licensed medical practitioner.
If we left that as an or just based on staffing, I am fairly confident we will be partnering with a nurse practitioner, but if we end up with a licensed medical practitioner, then prescriptions won't be an option. That'll change the scope slightly.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about trying to understand who will actually be served by this, because there's a number of exclusions. There's a limited number of eligibilities. I'm just going to get very, very specific because we have residents calling us about very specific types of behavior. So we have an individual who, I'll just use the expression, cries loudly as he walks through our city. Oftentimes walks in front of City Hall. Is that person eligible? Like if someone says, hey, there's a guy who's crying outside and he's nonstop crying, I call 911 saying something weird is happening. would that person be eligible for this service?
Based on that information, I would say yes. As
And
long
why-
as safety concerns, if the person is not demonstrating any acts of violence to themselves or possibly others, and that's ruled out by the dispatchers, then the call would be eligible for the ARU.
So help me understand why, because I was looking at the kind of the eligibility criteria and I could not see how this was going to work. So maybe you can go to your eligibility criterion.
These are just some of the scenarios, not an exhaustive list. Basically, we'll be working with SLPD on this triage process. These calls come in. Is it a mental or behavioral health crisis? Yes. And then we'll start going down exclusionary and asking those questions about violence, weapons, etc. If those are ruled out and it still falls into mental behavioral bucket, then the ARU would be recommended. So I was trying to provide some examples on eligible scenarios, but it could be much more extensive.
I guess I'm trying to dig in a little bit on who's in, who's out. We have had reports of individuals who are displaying what some perceive as menacing behavior. Right? They raise a hand quickly in the presence of somebody and it scares them. I think of, okay, so someone calls 911 and, the lay person might say, well, there's some crazy behavior happening here, right? Crazy, air quotes. But does that translate into there will be a dispatch for that type of service, or is that's not really type of thing that's covered?
It could be covered. And this is part of the iterations that occur early on. It really all depends where, the information is as good as that reporting party. If it's a known person that maybe SLPD has known about and knows their behaviors, and it might be a call where SLPD goes initially first or goes with the ARU and the ARU stages. But then over time, dispatchers learn, PD learns, the ARU learns, they can respond to this person. It's a known person. And all the criteria have been met each and every time somebody calls about them. Those questions are asked and kind of filtered that way. But it is a learning process in the beginning. Dispatchers will err on the side of safety. They're not sure they're going to send PD or, but that's where we're going to work together and learn and iterate on those borderline calls.
I think one of the questions that our residents have when they talk about, again, I'm going to use air quotes, these are words that residents use, not words that we would use or that a clinical medical professional would use. So there's crazy people, right? I want them dealt with, the words again of the public. Will this program address the concerns of residents? And if so, how?
It really depends on the call. I think there's definitely situations where it could at least address that specific call, depending on the nature of what that resident is seeing. But if it's somebody who's experiencing a crisis and they're not violent, they don't have a weapon, they're not threatening, those are the kind of calls this unit is for. They're trained in de-escalation, they're trained in crisis management, they're trained in trauma-informed care. So they are skilled at encountering, reported crazy people. That is part of the job description.
Now, there's been some discussion about 5150, among other things. One of the challenges that we have heard about, I'm not here to assert that it's factually true, but it has been alleged that people are sent to John George or other facilities and they're back on our streets within 24 hours, doing exactly what they were doing 24 hours before. I'm wondering, how does this help address that, if at all?
So that's definitely been talked about. It's a countywide crisis on that level with the circulation through John George. I am optimistic this unit can help some of those people. It might take repeated engagement with those folks. But if they are nonviolent and willing to accept care, This unit will be offering that over and over again. And they will be offering substance use abuse treatment, those types of things. But it really will depend on the person.
Okay, given the expiration of my time, what I'd like to do is come back to my council members to see if there's any follow-on questions. Okay, I've got a couple more questions. On the budget, so there was a reference to hospitalized or medical hotel. I forget the exact terminology, we can find it. Medically supported hotel site. If it was fully utilized, both beds fully utilized, that'd be a cost of $378 per night. So I'll just say full utilization for a half year. Help me understand why it's so expensive, because I suspect we won't fully be utilizing it. So the actual cost per night is much higher.
My understanding is, first off, there's a waiting list to get into the shelter because of the type of wraparound services they provide and care for substance use abuse specifically, as well as behavioral health. There are very, very few shelters that provide that kind of care. There's none in San Leandro that will take folks with those kind of issues. So that is partly to explain the cost of that. Are the extra care, the wraparound services, and then tempting them to get out of the shelter into further services. But if we don't support the bed spaces, they will be taken up by other users if we don't fund them.
Chief, I just wanted to add briefly that this is a really unique feature of this program specifically, to have the access to this medically supported site. We have not seen another program in the county that has this type of access to this service. And as Chief Bowie mentioned, in addition to providing the care, it also can connect to longer term care, transitioning folks into other shelters, other services. So it's a way that our providers can really be integrated into the homeless care system.
And so just to run with that a little bit, if we identify an individual, let's say, who is suffering from substance abuse disorder, we ask them if they want to go to this facility, or we're placing them in the facility.
We're asking. Right now, it has to be voluntary. We can't force anyone in.
Okay, and so we're paying for the facility. We're basically paying a flat fee for the facility, regardless of whether we use it.
Correct.
Okay. If someone else uses the facility, let's say that someone from Alameda or Oakland, some other city, right? If they bring folks there, do we get our money back? Or are we paying for the kind of, I'll just call it a reservation price? Sounds like we're paying a reservation price.
We're paying for the reservation price. And so we're currently talking with the provider about how to make sure that we're utilizing our beds most efficiently and really capitalizing on that resource.
Thank you. So at this point in time, we'll take public comment.
Mr. Mayor, we have one public comment in person and one online.
Please proceed.
Do you want in person first?
Let's do in person first, please.
Miss Addie Kitchen?
First, I want to thank Chief Williams for working on this. It's been over 3 years. My grandson was murdered in 2020. He was in a mental health crisis situation. I believe if we had this program, he may not have been murdered. We know that when law enforcement is called and people are in a crisis, most of the time, police are not trained to deal with people in crisis. And we know that a lot of people that are in crisis have been murdered by law enforcement because they don't know what else to do, because they're not trained to deal with situation. So I thank the fire department for the work that they've done. I appreciate it. And I will continue to keep my eye on how things are going. And I thank City Council for at least taking the time to listen and pray that you guys will pass this resolution. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Now we will go to online comment. Doug Spalding, you may unmute yourself.
Thank you. Mental health first response is way overdue in San Leandro. It is a necessary service for all municipalities, I think. Let's see. Hopefully you're still hearing me. Didn't cancel myself out there. I'm a little unclear on what's taken so long to get us to this point. You know, there's a very good model that we pointed you to in Eugene, Oregon, the CAHOOTS program that's been around since 1989, a coordination between the Eugene Police Department and mental health professionals there. And their model came from, well, the Haight-Ashbury Clinic in San Francisco. So right, we've known what to do for a very long time, but I know it's a complex issue with lots of permissions and staffing and funding and all that kind of stuff. I have a few questions. One is, how does the new ARU program coordinate with the existing CAT program, which we rarely hear about anymore? What are the prospects of hiring people who are qualified nurse practitioners, EMTs? You know, the history of this goes back farther than your timeline. It goes back to Stephen Taylor's murder. It goes back to the shooting of Anthony Gomez on his mother's porch, for precisely reasons that Addie Kitchen stated, that right, we don't know how to deal with folks. But if I understand the exclusionary rules, the ARU wouldn't have responded in either of those cases. Gomez had a machete and Stephen was carrying a bat, which could be construed as a weapon. So my hope is that over time, this model will evolve and the ARU will get more involved and the San Leandro Police Department can take a little bit more of a step back and not have to be involved. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Your time is up. Mr. Mayor, there's no more public comment.
Okay, so we'll bring it back to council for discussion. Councilmember Azevedo, please.
Yes, I want to move this item. I think this is really important because we have a lot of people in our city that we see walking around with issues, with mental issues or different issues, and I think this will really help them out.
Councilmember Aguilar.
Thank you, Mayor Gonzalez. I think, there's been a lot of instances, our police department had major issues with being the Wild West. And, we've done a lot of work on the council to transform and advocate for change. And, we've had the community come forth and say they were demanding change. And so, we've done our work as a council to help transform and work together to transform our police department. And I think with Stephen Taylor, with what happened on April 18th was a day of infamy for San Leandro. That was also the time we were experiencing COVID, a time we were also experiencing the murder of George Floyd. And so we've had the community come in here and every council meeting advocate for change. And I think, this is, I'm still shocked that it's taking this long, but we want to do it right. And to make sure that we are implementing a program that can help save lives. And I think just if we save one life, we're doing our job. And I think, with Stephen Taylor having a mental health breakdown and watching that video over and over and over again, I get PTSD from having to relive that experience as a council member to try to make decisions to transform our community and to make sure that we're taking care of those that are having mental health issues in our city. And, I have no problem spending this money to work together with our fire department and our mental health alternative response units to make sure that we're doing an effective job. I wish this could be 24 hours. There are folks that are having mental health issues 24 hours of the day. There's a person who is a resident in the Floresta Shopping Center who, can't help herself. And so we have to offer assistance. Many times you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And so, these folks can't help themselves because some of them are schizophrenic. They need wraparound services. They need to be in 24-hour care. And they get that when they commit a crime and go to Santa Rita to get that 24-hour care that they need. And so we need to prevent that to make sure that we're taking care of them and that they're getting the aid that they need. I think with response to, what it costs, I think, we're getting a great deal to take care of those folks and give them the assistance that they need. That's what community is about. And I think to save a life, this program is amazing. And for our dispatch department to make that call and for folks to call and to say, hey, I think this person is having a mental health breakdown, send fire department rather than send the police department. And like the chief had mentioned with regards to, if there's weapons involved, I think that's something that we need to highly focus on to make sure that we're, doing what we need to do to not take a life unless, anyways, I just think that this is something that's long overdue, and I would like to second the motion to put forth this resolution.
Thank you. Councilmember Baloo.
Now, you did exactly what we asked you to do 2 years ago when this came up and was developed. I also want to acknowledge former city manager Fran Robustelli for her efforts and vision on this matter. And thank you for being willing to provide the EMTs and paramedics for the team. I know that repeat calls like these can take their toll on first and second responders. And I know, so that's a win-win for the fire department as well. Chiefs, when you tested to become firefighters, I would imagine being here tonight would never be something you'd see yourself doing, and developing a program like this, probably never anywhere near or on your radar screens, but here we are. Now comes the hard truth for me and the constituency that has reached out to me. This is no reflection on your efforts. You did exactly what we asked you to do. But I'm concerned because programs like this take a while to get off the ground. That equals startup time and costs. And it's a program focused on mental health. Public health, in my mind, is a small responsibility of cities, notwithstanding cities that have their own public health department. But I believe public health is in a large way, the responsibility of counties. I know we've had the CAT program. I also believe I'm the only elected official to ever rode with the CAT program, and it took me 8 months to get that ride along. I could be wrong. Maybe someone else rode with him, but to the best of my knowledge, that's true. And the work they did was laudable, but any long-term improvements in the health of their patients was virtually not measurable. It was a revolving door, and they were as frustrated as many of us who were first or second responders have been in the past. So trying to make a dent is important. Trying to have a positive impact is important. $1.3 million is a lot of money, and the plan only covers 35% of the waking work week, 16 hours a day, and we've got 40. It's equivalent to about 5 full-time honorable firefighter positions. Actually, it's 1.35. I calculated that on 1.5. So it's equivalent to 4 full-time honorable firefighter positions or 4 full-time honorable police officer positions. In fact, if this were a police position like our homeless outreach team officers positions that existed before our prior council defunded them, the program would be a first responder program and not a second responder or non-threatening subject response program. So as demonstrated earlier tonight, constituents expect us to be stalwart stewards of public funds. And frankly, I've had a conversation with 2 brothers Saturday who've lived in San Leandro for several years. They shared they worried about us spending money without projected results or outcomes and don't want us just supporting a revolving door program. I think their sentiment is echoed by many in the community. So how do we resolve that? Of course, there must be a balance with the moral question that Councilmember Aguilar alluded to. What if it does good for one patient? Is it worth it? And so constituents have used the subtext of elected officials being responsible for the mental health industrial complex to sustain organizations and employ folks that do work in these areas, but have no significant impact on the problem. My hat's off to anybody that works in this area. It's an impossible area to continue sustained efforts and be fired up about trying to help people, and their success rate is not very high. So without optimal incomes, projected outcomes, possible outcomes, I'm having a difficult time mustering the belief on behalf of the 89,938 to support this spending. On the other hand, I will not be opposing it either. I think it's worth it as a pilot project, but I will not be supporting or opposing. I will be abstaining on this ordinance. Those are my comments, Mr. Mayor.
I'm checking to see if Councilmember Bowen, yes, you do have your hand up. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to share, I was thinking this already, but certainly Councilmember Baloo had just talked about a few things that I want to mention. I do think that it's necessary for us to work not just with the county, but probably, more broadly across the region and the state and the nation to try to address this and work together to be able to sustain real results. And public health is part of public safety, and public health is part of quality of life priorities. And I think when we talk about mental health, there are definitely real experiences, situations that the council members have and public comment has alluded to. I want us to recognize that when we talk about mental health and some of these responses, that the AR unit will be able to address, really does extend beyond that as well. I spoke earlier about having to call SLPD at one point for an individual very close to me. And I know that in that situation, if I would have had this unit come, it would have certainly been a benefit to me and the person that I truly care for. And so, this is, I think, an incredibly important effort. And I really appreciate all the time and consideration and effort that's been put into it. I think the feedback and the questions have been fantastic. And again, this is all, learnings from it. I think the other piece of this too is that, we can be reactive, which is what this effort will be, but I think it can also be a really critical piece of being preventative as well. When we do that public outreach, I think there's a lot of opportunity there to uplift some of the things that we're trying to address. And so I think that this is part of our mandate, right? And sometimes it expands in different ways. And I think that this is a worthwhile investment.
Thank you for your comments. Anything? Okay, so at this point in time, I will offer my thoughts. I am a bit concerned about the fact that this program would not have helped Stephen Taylor in his moment of crisis. I'm concerned this program would not have helped Anthony Gomez in his moment of crisis. So I share the concerns raised by one of our public commenters. I think when I was on the budget task force, I specifically voted to support this concept of bringing in nurse practitioner or some sort of medical professional to help assist in this process. It's something that I believe in concept. I have been struck by the magnitude, by the sheer cost of the program. And so I think, you heard me ask a lot about where, for which individuals, who's going to be impacted, how many will be impacted. And I am quite concerned that there aren't going to be tangible metrics, that the individuals in various locations, that we will not see a change. I'm quite concerned about that. So we're going to spend $1.5 million and we're not going to see a change. Ultimately, I was strongly supportive of the governor's mental health financing bill. And so I provided, as Mayor Sanleander, support for that action. So I do believe that, as Councilmember Aguilar pointed out, one of the things that we see right now is people go to prison to receive some of the services that they can't receive through other methods. And so we need to create that infrastructure that was gutted over many years. And that leadership really does need to come from the state and cascade down through the county. It is a very heavy lift for an individual city that has infrastructure challenges and has a number of unfunded liabilities. So, I fully respect Councilmember Blue's abstention. I fully believe that there is significant risk associated with delivery of tangible benefits. That being said, I think that I would like to see this run for, 6 to 12 months and us really have a very hard look at, are we getting something tangible? Do we see the individuals getting better, for lack of a better word? Because if after spending money, and there are very specific known individuals that are identified by the downtown ambassadors, by SLPD, that are known by residents of our city, if we're not making progress, but we're spending money, then I consider that problematic, because all we're doing is moving them around, perhaps taking them to a facility, they come back the next day, and then we repeat what some colloquially call Groundhog Day. And so I think we need to be very honest with ourselves as to whether we will actually make a change. And so I will be supporting this tonight, but I think it's one that I'm going to keep a really close eye on because I am concerned that we're doing something that feels good, but might not actually be making a change. I do very much appreciate the work that's gone into this. I know that you guys went through 3 RFP processes, if I remember correctly. So it's a lot of work. And I think that out of respect for the work that you've done, we should give you a chance to go and try and make that difference. But I don't assume the outcome. I don't presume that it will be effective. I want the data to show us that it will be effective. And so with that, I'm going to call the question. We have a motion by Councilmember Aguilar, seconded by Councilmember Azevedo, to move this item forward.
Councilmember Bowen,
Yes.
all votes are in. Councilmember Aguilar, yes. Councilmember Azevedo, yes. Councilmember Baloo, abstain. Councilmember Bowen, yes. Councilmember Viveros Walton, yes. Vice Mayor Simon is absent. And Mayor Gonzalez, yes. Motion passes 5011 with Councilmember Baloo abstaining and Vice Mayor Simon absent.
Okay, so at this point in time, we'll move to our next agenda item. Our next agenda item is council request to schedule agenda items. But before doing that, because our standard closing time is 10 o'clock, and I appreciate the grace that was given to us so that we could complete this item, I will first take a motion to extend our time. So I'm going to go to Councilmember Viveros Walton.
I'd like to make a motion to extend the meeting to 10:30.
I'll second.
So I've got a motion by Councilmember Viveros Walton to extend our time to 10:30. With a second by Councilmember Aguilar. Please vote.
Councilmember Bowen,
Yes.
all votes are in. Councilmember Aguilar, yes. Councilmember Azevedo, yes. Councilmember Baloo, yes. Councilmember Bowen, yes. Councilmember Viveros Walton, yes. Vice Mayor Simon is absent and Mayor Gonzalez, yes. Motion passes 601 with Vice Mayor Simon absent.
Okay, so at this point in time, let's move to council request to schedule agenda items. Councilmember, I think it's Viveros Walton, right? Or did you have something, Councilmember Viveros Walton, please?
Thank you. I'll do this quickly. I submitted an item to the city manager and to the clerk on a request to have an information presentation on on the status of Lake Chabot Road, preferably on the first meeting of September. This is really an information presentation that would kind of level set information of what's happening, what work is ongoing, and kind of where we are. I'm specifically concerned about the increased traffic that's happening in the neighborhood and some of those concerns. So I would like to have that information to kind of so that we all have the same information and be on the same page, and then address some of the concerns or have a discussion about direction or something on how to address those concerns from the neighborhood on the increase in traffic and the increase of the speed of that traffic going up and down the hill.
Okay, so at this point in time, before moving further, I just want to check with city manager, because I know we've had a number of presentations that facilities to see what kind of lift would be involved so that we can assess the request. The city manager, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For this item, this would be something we can definitely do for the September meeting. Director Marquesis has been to facilities with a few presentations on Lake Chabot Rose, but I also think it's appropriate for us to come before council because we haven't been here in a while with those presentations.
Okay, so we've got a request and an assessment by city manager. I'm going to come to you, Councilmember Baloo.
Just a friendly maybe suggestion or request. Could we make it a work session instead of at a council meeting? Because I feel sometimes the public feels that council meetings, they come, they have to sit through it just to hear their piece. It seems somewhat confrontational. Whereas if we have a single issue, and I imagine a lot of people show up, more people will feel included in the presentation and will benefit from the presentation. So I don't know if that's something that you would be okay with, Councilmember Veros Walton, or it may be the second week in September rather than the first meeting. And again, that would be up to our city manager. Also coming off that August break, it gives our staff a little bit more of a runway to get that done for us. Work sessions typically, to me, feel more, community and less business.
I don't know what the schedule is in terms of a work session that month.
Sorry, go ahead, Councilmember Viveros Walton.
Yeah, I'm open to the suggestion. I just don't know what it would bump, like if there is something already on the work session schedule. Definitely don't want to bump anything.
So let me ask you this, because we do have a constraint. Our September work session is a meeting with the school boards, correct? Both school boards. And so the question is, would you be fine with having it a work session in October?
Can I chime in about the October work session?
Certainly, Madam Clerk, because you have access to all of our agenda.
The October work session is reserved for a joint meeting with the council and the Rec and Park Commission.
Withdrawn.
I would like to pursue just a information presentation at a council meeting on September 9th.
Not September 9th. September 9th
Sorry.
is a work session. It would be September
September
3rd.
3rd.
Tuesday.
I apologize. I wrote the wrong date on the referral. I apologize for that. September 3rd.
Okay, so we've got a request by Councilmember Viveros Walton for an information item come at our first council meeting in September. So that'd be September 3rd, which is a Tuesday. Looking down the row, given the presence of the existing information already from facilities, I know Vice Mayor has heard, Councilmember Azevedo has heard, you feel it'd be beneficial to hear the presentation here at council? I'm getting some head nods, so just by consensus. Councilmember Bowen, I don't know if you'd like, or if you're asking a question or if you're giving your support with your hand up, so please. go
I'm
ahead.
asking a question just for clarification. I
Please.
did not receive any of the information about the referral. And I know with the new handbook rules, I think that was part of the process. So I just want to understand.
I'll go to Madam Clerk. Was it circulated at some point?
Was this referral circulated? No, I did not email it to council because it was to be brought up tonight. But the council handbook says that the referral has to be submitted to the city manager and city clerk in advance of the meeting, typically by 3 p.m. for the meeting. And then the council member would bring it up during item 11, council request to schedule agenda item. So it does
Okay,
not
so-
count first. It would go to the city manager and city clerk.
Okay.
Understood. Okay, that was, sorry, I misunderstood that from when it was brought up at our priority work session then.
No, otherwise it would be a violation of the Brown Act.
In what way
Understood.
would it be a violation of the Brown Act to say that something will be in our,
Because if it turned
Agenda.
into potential discussing an item ahead of time, because it's coming from a council member, it could
so
potentially.
I'm going to go to city attorney. So the facts and circumstances for this hypothetical is that a council member says, I will be requesting that something be placed on the agenda, and here's the why, right? So it's a submittal to the clerk and the city manager. If that's shared with council, demonstrating an intention to do something, does that create a Brown Act violation?
It potentially does.
Well, I need more than potentially. Tell me the circumstances under which it would.
It's a communication regarding a topic of discussion within the subject matter jurisdiction of the body that would be communicated to the entire city council outside of a meeting.
And what would keep it from being a Brown Act violation?
I think something that doesn't describe the circumstances or any details of the discussion, but just note that someone is going to request a future discussion regarding a topic.
Okay, so I think it'd probably be useful just for a future discussion, and city manager, I'll let you work this out with city attorney, et cetera. Any type of sharing, and what would be the parameters in which we could share some information so that council members are aware coming into this discussion? Because the whole point of the disclosure, I think, was so that council members are aware and can have thought about it. At least that's what I thought was happening in rules. But I'm going to come to you, Councilmember Vedas Walton, because you were in rules.
Yeah. So I was under the impression that it would be like added to the agenda. However, what we could do is follow the same schedule that staff has in order for it to be submitted. That means that the deadline would be pushed up, right? So you can't submit a request like at 3 o'clock the day of the meeting, but unless it's an urgent item.
Certainly. So I'm going to come to city manager to get her thoughts on this, and let's see where we go. But what I don't want to avoid is the question on the table about addressing this. So I don't want to get too sidetracked. But if you have something quick to add, city manager, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That was going to be my request, is that we address the referral. Just for clarity of the process, that on referral information being sent to council, as Council Member Bowen stated, this is something that she had referred to regarding the retreat discussion of referrals was a robust discussion about those referrals after council members decided to submit their written request. That would be shared as we prepared for those items to be brought back. But for this specific everyday council meeting item, it was not, we did not discuss that these would be shared with council members in advance.
Okay, so is there any further discussion on this item? Councilmember Blue, please.
Sure, this horse is dead. I remember it differently in rules, and I remember how it got to rules, and I think it was an attempt to avoid shotgunning added referrals, because maybe someone comes in as a public speaker at a meeting about something emotionally charged, and all of a sudden the council member says, I want to talk about that, and then and to the point about Brown Act ahead of time, but tell me if I'm talking too much about the topic, city attorney, but I think it's a problem. I think it starts allowing us to form arguments and maybe with knowledge, even unknowingly invite the public's sentiment in, which is not the intent. The intent was to make sure that the city is running efficiently and smoothly, rather than starting to form, getting a peak and starting to form what we want to or not. And then all of a sudden it becomes an arguing session, rather than should we just look at it in the future as a body. So that's kind of where I'm sitting. But the most important thing is how it got to rules. It was to have a more organized approach to what the business at hand that we were going to take. And I should probably just leave it at that.
So at this point in time, what I want to do is look down the row and just see if we've got consensus. So before, I think we had consensus before we went on to this little sidetrack. And by looking at head nods, I think I've got consensus. I do have consensus. And Councilmember Bowen, at this point in time, is your hand to add to the consensus discussion? Because if it's to discuss the interpretation of rules, we'll take that in a follow-up meeting. So I'm going to call on you now.
No, I think that the discussion is, about the referrals, that's fine for later on. And I've seen some, I don't know if I don't want to speak too much about it if I'm not supposed to, but so just stop me when you need to. I have, before the May, in May, Director Marquises had given me a presentation about Lake Chabot Road, and because it's something that certainly my constituents as well as the rest of the city are interested in. Would it be okay to broaden that presentation to include some other infrastructure projects?
So at this point in time, I am going to stop you because this is really not a discussable item, so to speak. We're just looking for, because it's not an agendized item. So it's really a question of, do we feel comfortable it being on the agenda? I think at this point, we do have council consensus in the room. So I'm going to kind of
Okay.
stop the discussion there and then move on unless you have an item that you're anticipating to, or you're requesting to add?
Me?
Yes.
No, well, because I would have had to submit it by 3 o'clock today, correct?
Understood. Okay. So item number.
But that's good to know for the future if we want to just put items on for discussion, for information too. So that's helpful.
Certainly. So at this point, item 12, are there any announcements that council members would like to make? Councilmember Aguilar?
Thank you, Mayor Gonzalez. On July 10th, on Wednesday, July 10th, I attended the 1127th meeting of the Board of Trustees of the Alameda County Mosquito Abatement District. We had a presentation by Joseph Houston with regards to mosquito species of Alameda County, which was very informational. We had a discussion about the city manager evaluation, and we appointed an ad hoc committee to discuss the city manager evaluation committee and review proposed changes to the evaluation process. And then on Friday, July 12th, we had our inaugural Pride celebration in partnership with the city of San Leandro. Thank you to Fran Robustelli, who worked closely with Downtown San Leandro Community Benefits District, Morgan McRose, and to Sean Sullivan, and to myself for spearheading and putting all of this together while I was away at Harvard planning this event and doing various other things. So it was a great success. Thank you to our sponsors to the Port of Oakland. Thank you to Amazon, and thank you to Build Out California, which is a LGBTQ organization that helps support LGBTQ folks in construction and the engineering space. And thank you, Mayor, for being there. We had our supervisor, Lena Tam's office represent. We got a proclamation or resolution from Assembly Member Liz Ortega's office. We had various council members and mayors from various cities. A lot of folks were attending the building trades gala, which I unfortunately was not able to attend because I was working and participating in the Pride event. But it was such a great success, and I had so many people come to us and say it's about time. And so it's we made history in San Leandro on Friday. So it was amazing. Thank you everyone for all that participated and attended.
So we're technically over our time. Are people willing to stick around for 10 more minutes, 7 more minutes, something to just wrap this up?
Motion to extend the meeting 5 more minutes.
So I've got a motion. Do I have a second? I've got a second from Viveros Walton. Please vote.
Councilmember Bowen.
Yes.
All votes are in. Councilmember Aguilar, yes. Councilmember Azevedo, yes. Councilmember Baloo, no. Councilmember Bowen, yes. Councilmember Viveros Walton, yes. Vice Mayor Simon, absent. Mayor Gonzalez, yes. Motion passes 5-1-1 with Councilmember Baloo voting no and Vice Mayor Simon absent.
Councilmember Viveros Walton.
And just wanted to alert the, I will be absent on the September 16th meeting. I have a overnight work event, so I won't be here on September 16th.
Thank you for the notice. Councilmember Azevedo, please.
Today, I attended a EBDA operations maintenance meeting. We discussed a pumping replace at the HEPS, the Hayward Effluent pump station. And at the Marina Dechlor facility, the main breaker was replaced on June 28th. That was it.
Okay, at this point in time, I'd like to move to item 13, which is our adjournment. And to make I think just a request that we end in silence because we had some pretty significant political violence that happened this weekend. And it cost the life of at least one individual. All that individual did was to show up at a rally. Just showed up to support a political candidate and did not go home. I think that it's easy to use vitriolic words and claim that we're okay. But the truth of the matter is, when people use vitriolic words, when they make claims of corruption and all sorts of things that just simply aren't true, it creates the impression that things are terrible and horrible and that violence is the only solution. And so I think that we owe it to ourselves, we owe it to our community to be very mindful of the things that we say and how we encourage or discourage others from making such claims so that we ourselves don't fan the flames. So I'd like to end our meeting in honor of the individual who gave his life. If there are two, I apologize in advance because I don't know the medical condition of the other individuals that were injured. But that we end our meeting in honor of the individual who gave his life in the attendance of expressing free speech and just going to a political rally. So I'd like to take 15 seconds of silence. Okay, the time is 10:36. We are adjourned.